Mahalo Lele, and welcome everyone to another live digital Kava session here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. As always, how's it going in your neck of the woods, Mr. Atearoa?
We're doing well, Dua, here in Manurewa, South Auckland side. A bit overcast, getting colder every day. But it's still relatively nice now. It starts really getting pretty cold here in New Zealand, especially when you around June, May, late May, June. So we're getting there. The end of April. Oh, and also, it's Easter week here in New Zealand. We're celebrating, so we had the day off for Friday, and we'll have the day off tomorrow for Monday. It's Sunday here, so happy Easter to all the viewers out there. And yeah, Dua, that's kind of the weather and the update from my side. My side. How about you?
As for me, I luckily we're able to have this live because I made it back to San Antonio, Texas at 1 o'clock in the morning today.
Mm,
And was initially planning to just spend the weekend in Las Vegas. I spent the majority of the week in Reno, Nevada. It's a lot cooler over there. There's still some snow on the mountains
wow.
over there in
Okay.
Reno. So spent most of my time there. Had a last minute opportunity to come home. So we take every opportunity we can to come home. And that allows us to do the live digital Kava session here tonight. And pretty excited and pretty grateful we were able to make it. We have a fun handful of topics we were
Mm,
curating just before we started,
mm.
but we already have some comments here in the comment section. Polynesian
Polynesian
Prince,
Prince.
Malo. He says,
Sh-
Kautama, Malo. Absolutely.
Malo. Malo for
Poly
joining us,
Prince,
Polynesian. Poly Prince.
welcome, welcome. He says, Malo, for the content I get to use on TikTok, 100%. Really
Mm,
appreciate it. I think yours is the 2E account in there. Really appreciate it. It's been a good stuff and appreciate
mm.
that and glad that that helps you give some content as well. T
Nice.
says, Malo Taulava. Welcome,
Hey,
welcome.
Malo. Malo.
T's straight to the point. I be tired of all these tuna and fata spin-offs, and I always see what's the chance. And actually, that's something I want to. Maybe that'll be our impromptu topic, Masi, since
Yeah.
the tease brings this up.
All right. All
Let,
right,
let's
T.
let's
Starting us
visit
off.
because yes, let's go off of that topic from tease here because we see a lot of comments online of quote unquote Tuitonga occupation and how this, basically it's sold to us like it's the 300 Spartans who fought off Talakai Faiki and his warriors, and how it was some massive battle of liberation.
Mm.
What are your kind of thoughts on that, Mussy? What was this some real heavy duty, you know, give us free from Amistad, or William
Yeah.
Wallace from Scotland, where we're talking about generations of fighting? Like what's your perspective on this point that the Tu'imanua Empire is built off of this, and Ha'amoa is its own self-governing
Yeah.
empire. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think we kind of touched on it too, and I'll just reiterate because it is an important part of the Polynesian history. Right. To me, I interpret that event as a scuffle, to a kind of like a scuffle like happened in Velata. I'm leaning towards that. It wasn't like a full-on battle that Tupo the first, right, kind of took the reign and kind of established, all right, I'm in charge. It was just a little scuffle of two parties having a go at it for that day. The Tuna and Fata impressed the Tuitonga, because I think we kind of mentioned it. It was only a certain part of Ha'amoa, because you're talking about a lot of other higher chiefs in Ha'amoa during that time that were married, or their daughters were married to the Tuitonga family, that would, if you put effort into it, it wasn't like a whole unification of Samoa, like
Mm-mm.
Upolu and Savai, to go against the Tuitonga, because what's our reason for this? Because after that event, what happens? I think it's Kaulufonua Fekai that moves his residence and builds that in Palauli in Savai, his kind of residence or his place where he kind of, let's just say, commanded his his reign or empire at Savai, and he was there for 5 generations. So to me, it was a little scuffle, and the Tuitonga was impressed because apparently, with the Talagai Faiki during that time, maybe some that party that he was bullying or maybe gave too much orders or whatever, being being unfair to that a certain group within that part of Ha'amoa, and they rebelled, and he found, oh, they at least fight back. These people fight back, and I'm impressed. But he came back again. But not only that, his descendant came back and stayed there for 5 generations. So you know that's just my interpretation of how the event happened in Ha'amoa. I don't know if you had anything different, Tua, or to add on. What's your thoughts?
No, 100%. And let's kind of just step back and think a little logically, right? Sometimes we get a little too excited with, oh yeah, Tuna and Fata, and they fought, right? You mentioned one of them, okay? The Tuitonga, because they present it as Tuitonga occupation, right?
Yeah.
That automatically assumes that Ha'amoa as a nation or a self-governing body was separate. This was all
Mm.
part of
Yes.
the empire, right? Like this is like two villages next to each other
Mm.
competing, right? And one village saying, "Oh yeah, we're our own country." It's like, Yana, we're on the same island. We're not
Yeah.
like this separate thing. So
Mm.
this idea that there was Tuitonga, occupation, it's all based off of the concept of that Tuimanua had an empire, which we question very heavily, right? You have to accept that reality in order for the quote unquote Tuitonga occupation to happen. Another one is like you're saying, the Tuitonga has loyalists
Mm.
throughout Ha'amoa,
Yeah.
right? And from the best sources we can see, this was almost like a one-time little scuffle, like you're saying. We're not
Mm.
talking about full-blown war,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it happens relatively quickly within a short period of time. They wait until all the festivities are in full flow. People
Yes.
probably been drinking kava for who knows
Yeah.
how long, right?
Hmm.
They're bringing in the puaka toho and everything.
Food
It's
and
a
everything. Yeah.
it's a sneak attack for all intents and purposes,
Yes. Yes.
right? It's a sneak attack. And then, the Tuitonga is just there with his entourage. He's not there
Yeah.
with an army,
Mm.
right? He's not there, quote unquote, with this huge army. He's there with an entourage. So we're,
Mm.
we're saying maybe a couple hundred people.
Mm.
And he's there, and it sounds like thousands of people are there in Ha'amoa because you're doing
Mm.
festivities, you're
Mm.
doing all this stuff that's going on. And there's this whole quote unquote scuffle. And just think of the name that comes out, the title that comes out of this.
Yeah.
Marietoa. That
Yeah.
sounds to me like someone saying, "Oh, good job. You stood up for yourselves."
Yeah.
Okay, I can respect that. Maybe, I'm proud of you guys. Maybe, I
Mm.
recognize that. Does that sound like someone who's threatened by
No.
this? Does this sound like someone who's like, "Oh my gosh, this is a full-blown rebellion. I've lost control over this."
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
And this is a very different mentality. Do you remember when we listened to Kava University's commentary of when Ulukalala and his brother, was it Tuponiwa, they go and they kill the
Tuguaho.
Tuguaho?
Yeah.
Do you remember what they did to everyone in that house? Wiped them out.
They wiped them out. Yeah. Yeah.
Men, women, children. Everything has to be wiped
Because it
out.
becomes back and forth, and it.
Yes, it's
Yes.
trying to make a clean cut. It's like when you cut someone's heads off, you just trying to make a clean cut. If you wanted to get rid of the Tuitonga, what's the best thing you could have done? killed him right then and there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm.
There's a decent argument to say that they knew that that would have been a fatal mistake,
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
right? Because
Mm.
if they killed the Tuitonga, what would have happened? What Kaulu Fonua Fekai did to the
Yes.
assassins of the Tuitonga, he would have tracked them down,
And
brought
move.
them to Tonga, knock
Yeah.
out all their teeth,
And
make them
eat.
chew the kava,
Yeah.
right?
And probably eat them after.
And then yeah, I mean, so this is the kind of thing. To me,
Yeah.
there's a lot of question marks, and then there's also some oral history that says that Tuna and Fata were not even didn't even grow up
I
in
did see about
Haamoa.
that.
They're
Like
like from
Tuvalu.
Tuvalu or Tokelau or something like that. That they came from there.
Interesting.
So and then there's that whole situation that you're talking about, and even his last words, he says, "Marietoa, when I return, I will not return as a foe, but as a friend."
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
He even Talakai Faiki was never thinking, "Oh my gosh, I just lost
Yeah.
Haamoa." No, he's just like, "Okay, all right, guys.
You guys got me this one.
Hey, yeah, good job, but you didn't. It's not like you're a threat to me. I'll be
No.
back."
Mm.
And so that's another interesting thing to me is that whole concept. So this is the reason why, and I jokingly say it, but I also think it's very important. This is why in Ha'amua they have a whole, and I didn't know this until we did that study, Masi.
Yeah.
They have a whole legal system to address oral history, especially for
Mm.
disputes of land.
Land. Yeah. Disputes
Eh?
of land. Yeah.
Apparently, and we all know this, the stories tend to grow, and sometimes stories are made up for the fact of political land issues, whatever it is, personal. You
Mm.
wanna you wanna
They,
cause issues for someone, you make that happen. But that's something that we address many times, and like Masi said, Kaulfo Nuofekai. Oh, the other thing that's interesting, when we spoke with Xiaoxi Ilayu, he says that possibly the reason why there was a dispute, it was a religious one.
could be.
Could
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
Talakai Faiki wanted to impose Hikureo as the
Mm.
god instead of Tangaloa, and there was opposition to that in Hamo. So there's some reasons for it, but let's not make this sound like William Wallace defeating the English and independence given. I think that's a stretch, little bit of a
Mm.
stretch. Couple
But
more
good
comments.
discussion. Good discussion.
Masi, what a bears? Puff puff pass with you and your blah blah.
Water Bears, good to have you, man.
Hey,
Good
hey,
to have you.
welcome, welcome, Water Bears. Always a pleasure. T Style, welcome, welcome. He says Te upalu taufua maipe, malo T Style.
My dear, good to have you,
We
T Style.
we wouldn't expect anything less. Anything less.
Mm.
Hey, Seyo, I don't think I've heard you on the program before, so welcome, welcome. Masi, you want to
Welcome.
read this question and take a shot at it?
Let's go. So Seo comments here. Quick question: was there a Ha'atangaloa Ha'amaui in Tonga, and what year? So yes, the Ha'atangaloa and the Ha'amaui are considered the founding fathers of Polynesia that came to Tonga. Ha'atangaloa were, let's just say, they were the masters of structuring government or structuring the political aspect of the Polynesian nation, and the Ha'amaui, they were the masters, kind of like the masters navigators of the seas using the astronomical knowledge of the stars. The astronomy and knowledge of that. So that's my understanding. And they arrived together along with the Ha'ataula that kind of settled and were the caretakers of the Pulotu on the west side. So just in particular, Seo, the timeline, it keeps pushing the timeline a lot further with some recent data points with how far Tonga is, but I can the specific spots of where the settlements came, or these ha'as kind of settled. The Ha'ataula, where the priests, they settled on the western side of Tongatapu. The Ha'atangaloa was in that central part of like Folaha and even parts of like Nuku'alofa, that central part right there up to Toloa, and then the eastern side was the Maui, kind of Lalofonua or Lolofonua, kind of where they settle in the eastern part of Tongatapu, where the Ha'amonga is at, because its full name is Ha'amonga o Maui. So that's just my addition. Unless you have anything, Dua, are you different
No,
in that?
I'm pretty aligned on that. I think the only things I would add is, we keep looking. That's the one thing that's interesting about Tongatapu. The more they dig into some of the ruins, like Masi was saying, it goes further and further. So, according to Tevita Fare, Aho was in the 400 AD, and that's the latest, right? I mean,
Mm,
there could be more Tuitongas there that pushes Aho, and including the findings seem to push Aho possibly to
BC.
like, yes, the BC, early BCs. So if we're looking at the Tangaloa and the Maui, it could be 100, who knows, maybe thousands of years before that.
Mm, mm.
Another interesting thing, Masi, I think we covered on one of the videos, a guy looked at weathering patterns for like
Yes,
limestone,
yes.
and he looked at the Ha'amonga Maui and looking at the gaps and the weathering that's happened
Mm.
on the
Ha'amonga.
Ha'amonga. He goes, dude, when you do the calculation of natural weathering
Mm.
of limestone, he says this is anywhere between, possibly, who knows, this, we're just throwing this out there, he says between 10,000 and 50,000 years ago.
Yeah, which is a different assessment compared to carbon dating. So it was just
Yes.
what he provided with the coral rocks, and also also aligned with the 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 knowledge of Tonga, the first people when they were sailing to find Tonga in Ata, because I know some people are thinking Ata was the first place, Atata, which is they think is in the Nuku'alofa. There's an island on top of
Hmm.
Nuku'alofa that Ata was there, but Ata Tevita Fale, and I agree with him. Ata at the bottom where there used to be settlement on the kind of past, I think past Ewa, in the southern part of Tongatapu, and then they from there settled there before they made their way back up to Tongatapu, which is I think Hakula is the name, which is the kind of the eastern back part of Tongatapu, where they kind of start.
Yes.
And then the Ha'a Tangaloa, Ha'a Maui, and the Ha'a Taula kind of spread it out and established their settlement there and creating the Polynesian nation. So yeah, I just want to add that in there.
Malo, malo. Couple more comments. Says
Hey, Brown
Brown
Monk,
Monk.
malo, malo
Malo,
tama.
appreciate it. Hope all is good in your neck of the woods. So, with that being said, um, we did come across some interesting videos the last few days with Her Royal Majesty uh, Pilolevu sharing, some snippets of her speech that she gave to, I think, Tonga National University
Okay.
students
Mm,
a couple weeks ago, I want to say, and gave some interesting comments and thoughts. So thought we would do some commentary on her remarks,
all
and we'll
right.
go from there.
Sti kula mai ham ai fu lai mata ya ko ne puna ke pe ham mu ya pe kita ha te lai mata
Chào thế đệ yeah.
Yeah.
pe mo Beyonce e ko ne hi vai ya ko se fine u show se ki ta wai tonga ko ta wa fa tanga we ko fiela ka fihia ma mo tu apalangi te lai mata na e we friendly island ya ko hingoa ya o pangai hapai na ka ki hinga ki tonga mo lala mo niwa mo ewa mo e ka neo ngoia o ku ika ki tau tala e tau tolke ka folau e vewa the whole of Tonga ko friendly islands o ai fare
So
ko no
so
ko
so
moris
Pilolevu is saying Pilolevu is saying that only Ha'apai should only have the name Friendly Islands. The rest of Tonga Wangakovi pe. Eh? Is that what she's saying?
That's one way
What do you
to
think?
interpret it.
Eh?
That's one way to interpret it, right? So
Yeah.
so I think this video is the highlights, right? And we'll go
Mm,
into smaller segments, but I thought, I mean, one thing that I've noticed, Masi, at least the last 5 to 8 years,
mhm,
there seems to be a shift in the leadership of the royal family. They are, back in the day, it was always about being proper, following protocol, which is still important.
stay, yeah, stay out of the scene. There's no really too much
Yes.
public showing.
And always keeping things formal. I'm seeing like a lot more accessibility to the people, right?
Mm,
Like this kind of speech and just the tone of the speech, right?
yes.
I mean, growing up in Tonga, no one would ever expect one of the royal family to speak this way.
Mm,
It was always very formal, right?
mm,
Like none of this. Like this is interesting to me, right?
mm,
Because we've talked about this before. You have to adopt your strategy to the time, the need, and the
mm,
place. That's how the Polynesian Empire was, that this portion of the Polynesian Empire was able to survive
mm,
colonization. You
mm,
recognize the environment you find yourself as a leader. You have to figure out how to adapt to best lead, right? This is a leadership skill. It's
yeah.
having vision, it's understanding what the need is and how to properly lead. And I see this shift across the entire royal family, and it seems like they're saying, "Hey, we now know that in the modern day to keep the kingdom together, the leadership that's needed is not to be isolated, right? Because there's a lot of opponents of the royal family. There's a lot
Correct.
of opponents politically of this family that's leading the country. And the strategy is right now, from what I can see, is more access to the people, being more authentic with the people, not pushing isolation, not pushing overly formal or some of the protocols in the past. Granted, they still follow some of the major ones, but
Yeah.
in the personal interactions, it shifted quite a bit. Any kind of thoughts on that, or if you've seen that at all, just from some of the social media? I find it a little interesting that there's been this shift.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Tua. And it's also with the. I think it's just the time. I think Tongan now, especially the youth, they need a lot more. They need a lot more interactions and an understanding of what to of how to navigate life and what to see and expect some challenges that may come their way. And sometimes
Mm.
this kind of talking helps that's the thing, right? To what you were mentioning, the vision of the royal family as a whole, to see that some people need some tailoring around. I always compare it to like sometimes Polynesian parents, especially like maybe Tongans and Samoans, a lot of the parenting that happens with their kids is more of just observe and it's one way instruction. It's a very different to like give you instructions of like, no, do it this step. Step by step. It's almost like just watch me do it. Now you should be able to learn,
That's the
know how to
old
do it.
school way. Yeah.
That's the old school, right? This is the old school, and the royal family. Let's just say the royal family was doing like the old school way. You observe how they carry themselves, and that's the expectation you should follow. But right now, there's a lot more, speaking and in the same level, speaking to help the mass understand that maybe some things we can do better, things to look out for, and it's like certain step. It's like a certain step of instructions, which is a lot different back in the days. But those, like I said, Dua, those are the things of adapt adapting to the new way of people, of how they're viewing the world and how they interact with each other and with the world, because technology has actually changed how we interact and how we take in information. So this is just one way of helping us to navigate some of the chaos, because it's a lot of the information that comes to people is bombarded because we have it in the instantly from our phone. So it's just part of the new way, and I think it's good, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I, she's giving some interesting insight, right? Like she's talking about Beyonce and the big eyelashes and all the bling bling and stuff. And what she's saying is, hey, we know that that's part of life. We see those things, but it's also understanding there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing of something. Wisdom is knowing how to apply that knowledge. Just because you see Beyonce doing it, you should be like, well, that's Beyonce. That's that kind of culture and approach. That's not necessarily what we bring to the table that makes us unique. And if you go and try and be Beyonce, well, who's going to be Tongan, right? If you're going to chase that kind of thing, well, then you're giving away what's more valuable. And what's more valuable? A civilization that's been around for thousands of years, a culture that has lasted the test of time for so long, and something that the Western world is dying for right now, at least from my perspective, right? You look at the Western world, it is dying and
losing its identity every day.
Exactly. And what she's saying is, hey, Beyonce, but that's not us. Let's not give away who we are as a people to chase something that's a little flashy. So it's kind of interesting. So let's see what else is in the highlights here.
Okay.
Na fa ko logo molis. Panahange pa fo nga aspu hasima. Na ito uy ay tahi. Pea mau hao ai to valu ko mau tolo. Pako mau ki office tak mamata ko e fua Tonga Visitors Bureau yai e pure anga ko ene afio moho eiki. Na ha wiki Tonga na ostea tupuya. Na ia e ta ai uaha ni hina e koe whakameristi mai tolu na e tau he loto, pe nau tau whetongi pe he hau koe ke wafu. Koe taimia koe ia na e hau e whakameristi mai ni lahe o mā mohe. Mohe tongan toki alu pe he o no heng heng. Hene a. Tau ki ai pe e whakaamu e kutui e toi hoko pe ai ngai taimi whainga maari e koe ia. E kawa airport ia he launga I lahi mai. Koe nbe te tala at mahal pe os mahino ka ki mo tolu. Koe pe setia ni manoa o e tau kau folau ewa ki Tonga ni. Koe returning Tongans. Koe kakai Tonga nofo ia I muri. Pak nau foki mai nau tolu ia ki Tongan folau ewa. Paka tola nau tolu kai ke tau mai nau tolu ia nofo nau family. Fu efi pasi si. O na tō nofe hotere, mō tere, guest house, o na wō kai he uwhare kai, huwhangai whakatapu, ka ngā at peharea whakai ono pōn ke mahino kak mō tō. E nau mau e nau tō ria, ai ulu ngāanga o tourist, pe koe visitor. Ka koe haere tau mea tau toi tō ngani uwhai him tari ak nau tōlo. Not very good. Koe uhi, ko tau tolu, ko tau sioga ke palangi, mo sioga ke siaina, mo sioga ke Asia. Oh, sai pe. Ko tau tokanga mai he tipi I tau tolu. Ko tau sio pe katonga, masi. E kau fie palangi ne.
Very true.
O e sio ki he lanu e kiri, sio ki ta ki he seniti koe e wahe a koe ki. Tong.
She mentions in this speech, it's not in here, sorry, that there's other clips that are longer, but 50% of the tourism spend
it's just
returning Tongans. Remember, Masi, we had this conversation, right? The Tongan government from this digital Kava session discussion in the past focus on the Tongans overseas. I think this is not just for Tonga. I think for Ha'amoa, I think for Fiji, I think for all of the Pacific and Polynesia, they need to focus on helping and harnessing the financial opportunity that the Tongans overseas are bringing back. It's a no-brainer, right? But unfortunately, what does our government and our leadership today say? Oh, we need to go and make sure all the. I'm not saying don't invite foreigners.
Yeah.
Great. But there's a lot of financial opportunity with the existing diaspora that will have huge impact. I think a couple episodes ago, we watched a video where they had the government summit
Yes.
in Tonga, and they had a couple speakers that were like, we are foreign Tongans living overseas. We want to take our retirement fund. We want to
Correct.
bring all of that.
Invest in Tonga. Yes.
Invest in Tonga, but we can't figure out a way to do it. Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's because the government is so busy trying to nail these quote unquote big deals, right? Like heavy hitters, heavy investors. They don't even see the opportunity right in front of them. It's like what she's describing, basically what she's describing with the little person selling at the market, how a Tongan from overseas, whatever, not realizing that one Tongan spends as much as the next 4 Chinese or 4 Europeans in Tonga.
Yeah.
Just some thoughts there, Mussy. Anything to add?
Yeah. No. And that's an important issue to address, especially. And I'm glad. See, and this to me too, it just speaks volumes. That look at Princess Pilolevu, man. She's understanding the ground level what's going on with Tonga. So to me, this is a big deal because she's involved, and that shows the people that she's involved in understanding what's going on in the ground level to help the people, and what she can do with her position to let the people living in Tonga, let them know that these are some of the issues and we can do better. So to me, that's a big thing, because there's some people who think a royalty just don't. They're not understanding the issues people are facing
Everyday issues
every day, because they're in a different position. Just shows you, these are kagai ofa, and they're wanting to do better and see Tonga doing better. And I'm gonna just touch on what she mentioned before. I guess there was a time that there was 3 Wakamedi. She was saying that they would change, rotate. See, right now they only do one
every what? Every few weeks, every few months, or what?
Yeah. So it looks like Tonga is capable from the back, from our ancestors that have passed, that we were doing a lot better than what we're doing now. So it just shows you and this is the blame is all actually sometimes on the people too, because at the same time they elect they're electing the people to represent them, maybe not on the right basis, but it just shows you people are there. The Tongan people are there for the blame, because they're the ones electing their people's representative to get in there. Because look, under the government of the king, things were Tonga was prosperous, and since 2010, since 2010 till now, and the government has been headed by the people who elect their officials, things have been chaotic, to say the least. But that's just some of the things I picked out, Tua, from listening to Pilolevu's speech.
Not 100%. Let's give the princess some more time.
Right.
Ke nau kata ke o tape nau tapa i ngā tū ke asi ai pe mātanga ko nau tu wai. Ai oku exclusive. E kare ke te lava o whakatau a tapa i ngā tū ia asi ai blow holes, pe koe flying fox, pe koe ancient royal tombs, koe lapaha i koloni. Koe uwheitu mātanga pe koe ia. Ai lavarewa ki hiki hake totongia u mātanga. Tawo tatolo tori. Tuku tak mamata e whakahela ia pau ki toi o ako certificate mo hāfua. Koe whake hame ai maman e sai e whai ngofua. Koe mea katoa pe maman e mahu inga o ngā wei pe whai ngata. Vari.
Any thoughts on that, Mas? Is that me making noise?
Yeah, I hear the NRL There we go. There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Nope. I'm just thinking, she's probably absolutely right. I mean, I don't have any problem with the Tori. People seeing the opportunities they can get from there, and you also learn some good skills, in my opinion, working in the Tori, because you use some heavy machine and stuff. So there's some good skills that you can get from there. But I think she does address that the popular tourist spots, like she mentioned, in the Langis in Mua, La Paja, and the Ha'amonga stuff. We can do a lot to upgrade those areas, and then and that's the thing, right? What she meant, you gotta ngawe'i, and you in order to do an up, and they always say langa fonua, to build your country, or your village. It takes some work, and hopefully, and this is the thing. To me, it's two ways. The people are willing to do the work as long as the government makes it easier. The government of Tonga makes it easier for them to get access to that, whatever certificate, or access to build a business, or even like allow transportation for tourists who want a tour bus, and some more further hospitality that can happen during those tours. But um, that's what I'm thinking, Tua. There's two ways to that, because the Tori um, provides opportunity to learn new skills and go to new land, but also maybe the government of Tonga making that pathway easier for the people, because there's people in Tonga that don't want to go overseas and work six
Mhm.
months. That's the bad thing, right? When you do the Tori, you're 6 months away from your family and stuff, and that's not easy. So there's people willing to stay there, but if you give them the Tori, the only option, and it's easy to get that done, because the overseas company that funds that and pays for your whole stay, that's an easier thing to do and get paid well than getting somewhere to get certificate, and then once you do that, there's no infrastructure that the government has allowed for you to build a tourism business in Tonga. That's just me. I don't know what if there's anything else, Tua, you,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
think
I
of.
mean, there's one more video I think that she touched on a little bit, but to me, I don't know. Maybe I'm just too simple of a brain. Maybe I'm not educated like some of the doctors that are leading in Tonga right now. But it is the small and simple things that make the biggest difference. And like you were mentioning,
Mm,
roads, infrastructure,
mm,
wharfs, these little things. Like I look at it this way a little bit. They're all so concerned, at least from what I can see, and this is based off of what we see on social media and the news. They're all talking about building these huge infrastructure projects. Oh, we need to improve the wharf, right?
what's that lady? That lady that runs her shipping
Una.
business. They build a new wharf, brand new, and they've been using it for parties. And here she is as a business owner trying to load their boxes and goods to their boats, and not using the facility
Yeah.
because it's being used for a party event.
Yeah. And then they add metal along the edges, which cuts the ropes for her ships. And apparently only her boats could access it. And they were thinking about these bigger ships and stuff. See, this is what I'm talking about, Masi. When you think about these quote unquote mega projects, you will be blown away how much detail it takes to get it right.
Mhm.
And I don't think we're there yet in our people. And what I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying that we can't get there. You know what you need before you get a giant wharf? You need a bunch of little ones. You
Mm.
need to take care of the local fishermen's needs. You need to take care of the local farmers' needs. You build it from there. That's where you need to build. The problem is we're getting all the negatives of quote unquote government and not getting the benefits of it. And this is what I mean by it. They go and want to, get this huge project to build this huge wharf.
Mm.
And who does it really help? It only helps the guy who got involved in it and who can say, oh, look at what we built. But
Yeah.
improving the everyday life of a local Tongan? How did it improve the daily life of the average Tongan? Little to no impact,
Mm.
right? This is why I really appreciated Tuyo Netoa, his government.
Mm.
Is and it's just kind of sad that it just kind of happened on the tail end of his leadership. All the little wharfs and the little improvements that they did, that directly impacts the everyday citizen. And you know what happens?
Mm.
Their productivity goes up.
Yes.
When the fishermen can, get on these little wharfs, get on his boat, unload larger quantities of product, he's spending less time, from what my understanding is, hours to get on the boat, go out, then hours to get off and take off cargo. And sometimes the weather is bad, sometimes these
Mm.
guys have family obligations. If you can, those hours that would have been spent just getting in and out of the boat is spent out fishing,
Mm.
the product output is multiplied. Now, when you have that, then all of a sudden there's more cash flow, there's more
Mm.
productivity in the economy. Then all of a sudden there are resources to invest in the local economy. You have to have productivity. I'll never forget this.
What's that?
Sitting with a CFO in Fiji when I was working on a startup, and we were, it kind of got to a point, I guess we were a little arguing a little bit with this CFO. A brand new bank in Fiji had just got set. I'm sitting there with their CFO, their CEO,
Mm-hmm.
and we were making our sell pitch that our startup was going to help improve the quality of living, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the standard of living for local citizens. And I asked the CFO, what do you think will increase the standard of living for the average Fijian? And his
Mm.
answer was a bank account. And I said, if it was that easy, why don't you issue everyone in Fiji a bank account, and then all of a sudden there's no more poverty,
Yeah. Mm.
right? Like that doesn't make sense. But you have certain people in leadership that's what they think, right? Because maybe they got that idea from their college degree, but they aren't looking from the ground up. Or how can I help the everyday citizen? And if you do that,
Mm.
you will build to these bigger things. That is kind of like what I am envisioning when we're talking about when we get back to those Vakamades back then.
Yeah.
The sounds like to me, like in the 70s, there were multiple ways that the average Tongan could get cash,
Yeah.
copra, bananas, right? There was a lot of productivity that they could do on themselves as an individual to build up that money, which led to more opportunities to facilitate visitors coming. And unfortunately, I think we've lacked the vision to think simple in order to achieve great things. But
Mm.
yeah, that's my 2 cents on that, Masi.
No, nice. Nice. No, I like it. I like it, and I agree.
Um, let me see here. Let's go to our next topic. We'll jump into the next one. This one, Masi, give a summary of what you understand of
Ooh.
what happened here before I pull up the first video on Nico.
Let's go. Let's go. All right. So Nico Iamaleava, he's a high prospect recruit that started for the University of Tennessee this past year. He did pretty well for his first career start, I believe. He got his team to the top 12 out of 132 universities that compete in football. Tua, is that correct? In
Mhm.
Division One. So make it to the top 12. That was big deal. Um, the word that's out there that he was getting paid $2 million for that same year, and they were just going to renew him to carry on for this second career start or season start for him at the University of Tennessee. He didn't agree with it, so there's this opportunity that college players can enter a portal to go to another university. And I did hear some talks that he transferred to UCLA, but then I've
Mm.
I've heard some recent comments that that's not finalized yet, and that's not finalized yet. And apparently, he is still in the portal, but I'm not too sure. That's kind of where we're at with Nico Iamaleava to us. So did I miss any major timeline there with Nico?
No, that sounds pretty. Here's what I've kind of heard that. Oh, hold on. I don't know what's going on in the background here. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. Because I'm just
We're having
thinking.
some technical difficulties here.
No worries. No worries.
Okay.
No, 'cause- yeah, because I'm thinking. This is kind of the new age of college football players.
Uh-huh.
In this time that they can transfer to between schools depending on the neo name, image, and likeness that they can get from each university. So that's kind of where we're at with him at the moment. So I think it was like a stalemate, and then he was saying he was willing to walk out if they weren't going to increase his payment, and then the university said no, we're sticking to the same. So yeah, the looks like the university's moved on, and he's moved on
Yes.
too.
I'm trying to see here. I don't know why this is acting up the way it's acting up. Um, I'm trying to see. I'm trying to open up TikTok. Maybe it's because the China is not very happy with Uncle Donald, but it's like I open it up and it ends up like having like dual sounds in it. So we may just skip the videos on TikTok here. But yeah, it sounds like, and I don't know if you've heard the drama about this, Masi, because the head coach came out and said it's because Nico and his family were asking for too much money.
Mm.
Like going from like 2 or 4 million to $8 million.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
Yes. And a lot of this looks like there's some interesting chat going on YouTube here, but we'll finish this segment before we address Chief's
Okay.
questions and comments here. But so it sounds like the coaches came out, the University of Tennessee tried to put a blitz, and it put Nico kind of in like a bad
Name. Yeah.
name for him, right? Because it just makes him sound greedy, makes him sound like someone who's just out for the money. But there is rumors coming back that that's not really what happened. What happened was they were
Yeah.
asking for a better O line and some changes because I didn't watch a lot of Tennessee games, but it sounded like he was running for his life many times and the O line was a weakness and they really didn't have any really top notch receivers. So it sounds like Nico's people were thinking he was carrying too much of the risk and they wanted the school to step up and improve their recruiting in certain
Mm.
positions. Then there was also discussion that the way the offense is set up, it doesn't help Nico shine as well. I guess Nico said that he was of the under because he was the number 2 quarterback in the nation,
Yes. He
only
was a top.
only
Mm.
only behind Archie Manning. Like they were number 1,
Yeah.
number 2, but they both had 5 stars, scored 100% on all the ratings. The only real big difference probably is Archie gets the benefit of the Manning last name, right?
Yes.
Like that
Yeah. Carries a
pedigree,
lot of weight.
that
Yes.
pedigree.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of talk now going online that Nico really wasn't the problem and that really was the coach. And so when Nico didn't show up to practice, the school took the opportunity, or the coach took the opportunity to just say, yeah, we're moving on. Nico's holding out, wants more money, blah, blah, blah. And if that's true, I think there could be a chance this turns to legal implications, in my opinion.
Mm.
Because if it is a lie that Nico wanted, it was all about the money and Nico wanted X, Y, and Z, the fact that the coaches came out and painted him in a negative light, that hurts his opportunity to make money, which it looks like that's what he's suffering now. A lot of schools, when they saw that, they're like, uh-oh, we don't want to touch this guy. He's a problem child.
Yeah. He can ruin the team chemistry, the locker room.
Yes.
He's gonna ruin what we have here. So it's kind of hard to get him a landing spot. Okay, that makes sense.
and
That
it's
makes
gonna
sense. So,
be yeah. Go ahead, Masi.
mhm. No, I was gonna say because I haven't heard that side, but that makes sense. And man, that is it's interesting because there's everyone has an ego because the head coach is like, why do we have to change anything? We made it to the top 12. We just have to. What he's trying to say is we just need to build on what we have now, which probably Nico was not saying no. There needs some great improvement, which means a lot of changes, which the head coach is thinking. It's just thinking of the head coach is like, and he's probably thinking of his own job. He's like, like we made it to the top 12. We just need some tinkering. But looks
Yeah.
like Nico and his supporters are saying, we need some major tinkering. So we'll see.
Yes. Yes. And we will see what happens here. And what's interesting is, do you remember Huja Minzara? He was the receiver for the
Yes,
Bengals.
TJ Husmanzada. Yeah.
He's come out, if I remember correctly, and was saying he's a little bit more on Nico's side.
Mm.
And then is it Kirk Herbstreit said he met Nico, says it's like he's kind of surprised by this because he said Nico is like your typical Polynesian,
Mhm.
very, very humble, very, very kind. And this kind of
Mhm.
seems to be outside of his character. So this is kind of interesting. But the truth is, I mean, there was a lot of money on the table, and I'm wondering if some of the accusations are not true by the Tennessee
Yeah.
coach and Nico loses money. I wonder how much that will impact him thinking about, okay, I lost a lot of money because I was painted incorrectly as being a greedy person and not caring about the team.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a huge organization like the University of Tennessee. When they come
Yeah.
down on you, it's almost like you fighting the government, the U.S. government, on your own. Like that's
Yeah.
how it's a
It's
really
influential.
yes influential. And I'm glad things are kind of being sorted out, especially by some commentators saying that there's something that's not right here. So hopefully that can get sorted out, and Nico can kind of explain his side of the story. And to me, it would mean if Nico just has a good season, and then the Tennessee Volunteers don't have a good season, then we know who's the. It's almost like Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and like Russell
Yeah.
Wilson and what's it? What's the
Carol.
coach that Carroll? He's with the Raiders now. It's kind of like a thing like that, but hopefully things will. As a Polynesian Eyes podcast, we're rooting for Nico because we want him to do well because it lifts everyone when he does well, when a Polynesian does well. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Here's some comments here that T says, I actually think Nico made the right decision for himself.
Mm,
Make money while he has the leverage. Anything can happen at any point. The money he's making now with NIL is already enough to change lives. I don't disagree with that at all, T's. Um, and I wouldn't be against it if it ends up being true. It's all about the money, right?
mm.
I mean, especially if they're thinking, hey, I didn't even have a good O line. I didn't even have some real receivers.
I'm the reason. It's
I'm the
actually because
reason.
a
Yes.
quarterback is one of those positions that it's
Makes or
make the
break.
playoffs. Make the playoffs or no.
Yeah. So I think I'm aligned with that. T also says bet on himself, make money now, go to another college, proves his worth, and then make money on the next level as well. 100%.
Mm,
You never know. You're gonna get hurt. Something
yep.
else happens. You just never know what's gonna happen. So I think we're aligned on there with that.
I I just had
Go
a
ahead,
thing to
Masi.
it. It makes sense why, because he wasn't trying to go for the money. Because if he was really going for the money, like a lot more money, he would have had a landing spot because there will be another team willing to offer to pay for his skill set. But because he hasn't landed, and now the university is ruining his reputation,
That's a
like now
problem
he's
if
gonna
that's
make a
true.
lot less money than what he was making at the University of Tennessee because the University of Tennessee has come out kind of attacking him and his image and
Reputation,
his reputation, that he's gonna be hard for him to, if he does go to another like a Power 4 program school, won't probably get as much money. So it makes sense to it because if it was for the money, we all know with these agents and you have other people that can speak on your behalf, which you're saying, you're not um uh, was it tampering or whatever they kind of use, you can always get some other deals here and there from your kind of entourage. But because he didn't get one, it wasn't about money. It sounds like what you were saying to indicating this was a disagreement, maybe with some play calling, some personnel on the field, and also maybe maybe the offense they were running. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think you're kind of I think you're convinced me to that that could be the issue.
yeah, and I mean, this is a natural progression because this happens at the NFL, right? Some guys, some QBs are not happy. They're not getting the weapons. They're not getting the offensive line recruits, and
Yeah.
sometimes this happens. But this is
Mm,
just a natural progression with all that money going in on NIL. So, but I'm 100% agree with you, Masi. Is we hope he does well. This is important. Hopefully,
mm,
Nico finds a place to land and he does well there because just like every other Polynesian, when they do well, it does well for the Polynesian group overall.
yeah.
So looks like we have Chiefs. Let me see here who just joined us. Before we go that far, we have a couple people here. We want to welcome to Ro Niwa.
Bro, new.
Appreciate it.
Hello,
We
new.
have Nasir Claude says Malo Ngotama. Welcome, Nasir.
Hey, hello, hello.
And Moe says, "What's up, Tonga kids?" Malo Moe.
What's up? What's up?
Okay, Mussy, this one. Read this one out loud and welcome, Chiefs. Obviously, Chiefs has a different opinion. This is why, before I hand it over to Mr. Atero, this is the beauty of the Kava session.
Mm,
Everyone, bring your ideas, throw it in the Kava Bowl arena, and let's see. Looks like Chiefs is coming in with a new technique, a new style. His
all right,
idea, his
all right.
idea is proposing a more sophisticated approach. But kind of
Oh,
read that
wow.
off
Oh,
for
wow.
us, Masi, and let's dig into this a little bit.
All right. So this is one of the comments from Chiefs. We ha'a moa Cerro Tonga. We came together with the ha'a Tangaloa, ha'a Maui, and us ha'a moa. Okay. What do you think, Tua? What do you think of Chiefs' comment there? That's what he thinks.
Yes. Well, that my first thing is let's just assume this is true, right? Let's just say, okay,
Yeah.
if this is true, we understand what the Ha'atangaloa brought to the table, right?
Yep.
They were the kingly line. They
Yes.
brought the structure of government, how to run a civilization, how to
Yes.
organize it, and how to lead it. We have the Ha'amawi, very tied to navigation, fishing. Basically, this is kind
Bye
of like
bye.
the
Iyo.
yes,
Mm.
this is the industrious group, right? Had
Yes.
a lot of knowledge where
Tufunga.
they
Ah,
did tufunga and fatongia. Some
yeah.
people call it fatongia. We also had the Ha'ataula, which was the religious group, right? They
Yeah.
brought the religion, organized religion, how that fits into society. What did the Ha'amoa bring to the table? I don't know,
Mm.
right?
And that's a question, right? And that's a question we can
That's
ask
kind of a
Chiefs, and he
question. I
can.
mean,
Mm,
I have no real understanding of that. Um, but what I think is interesting is if the Ha'atangaloa and the Ha'amaui and the Ha'amoa came to Tonga from Ha'amoa, where are the ruins of this? Why is there
mm,
a Ha'amonga on Tongatapu? And why is it the Langis, where Tangaloa quote unquote lived, are built
mm.
in Tongatapu? Why? I mean, that's kind of my initial thoughts there. There's some more comments we can bring to this, but any other to add to that, Masi? But it looks like there's a few more statements or claims that Chiefs makes.
Yes. Well, and that's a good one, Tua. I think that's the question I would ask Chiefs is what did the Ha'amoa actually bring to the Polynesian nation? Because right, Ha'amoa is just an identification of a group of clan that settled in Upolu, Savai, Tutuila, Manua, kind of, maybe that kind of clan. Because the Tangaloa, we kind of mentioned the 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 Ha'ataula, they're responsible for the Lotu, right? The
Mm-hmm.
Pulotu. Tangaloa, like you mentioned, they're the ones in charge with with the government structure of the nation. And not only that, there's evidence of the ruins in all over Tongatapu, all over Tam, all over Tongatapu with the residents of the Langis. Then the Ha'amonga Maui, right? That's with the Ha'amaui. So that's evidence why we say those are the founding fathers. Um, and Lotu, when we talk about Lotu with the Taula, that's a common word in Polynesia, especially with Samoa too. They say Lotu still, right? That's kind of what they still refer, and that's a evidence from where it started with the Ha'ataula being in Tongatapu, the caretakers of bringing ancient religion. So that would be our question. What did the Ha'amoa bring? Chiefs, if you can comment and let us know and give us your evidence, that would be helpful.
Yes. So let me try and open up something here. Here's another statement here. Masi, if you could read that out and give your initial thoughts while I pull this up.
Go for it. All right, this is Chiefs again commenting. I'm not lying, Tongan style. That's why it's named Tonga, South, LOL. All right. So my thoughts there is that's been a common argument that we've kind of seen is they're using the islands as the cardinal direction of why you know Ha'amoa is in the middle. So that's kind of where it started, and Tonga being south, and then Lalo Tonga being a certain south. But remember, Tonga is not the cardinal direction, especially when you're traveling and navigating. You're not if you go directly south, you can actually miss Tonga. If you let's just say if you're going from Savai, you're gonna miss Tonga if you just go south, and it's it's not a precise location of just using that as Tonga being south that it can't be the origin of the Polynesian nation. And if you take Tevita Fale's understanding and the Polynesian viewed the world upside down, which Tonga was at the top, right? At the cardinal direction, which is and how they viewed the Polynesian islands, and that's why New Zealand, Aotearoa, was kind of the last place to be settled because there wasn't any place that was kind of behind Tonga because it was so cold. But
Mm-hmm.
every parts of Polynesia was settled. The furthest going all the way from Waihi, which is Hawaii, and then the Polynesian settling New Zealand. So that's just kind of my understanding. I don't know if you had anything else.
Yes.
Tua.
I'm going to pull up this real quick. And I think you mentioned the part that I want to focus on, right?
Mm,
There's two things I want to focus on because we hear this argument, and I think I'm really grateful Chiefs is on here, right? Because we hear these positions every 5 seconds on social media. And these are ideas. This is why it's important to, and I'm very grateful Chiefs at least showed up here.
yeah.
Chiefs, if you want to join us, we can talk through this even on live here, but at least you showed up here in the chat to discuss some of these things. So the funny thing is, like Masi, you were saying, the whole reasoning behind this is, because Tonga is south of Ha'amoa, and then there's Tokelau to the north, and Ha'amoa is in the center. You're basically saying that every capital or origin or center, geographic center is the origin, right?
Mm,
We look, I would say, like the probability of that happening everywhere. Look at the United States. Washington, D.C. is all the way on the East Coast. With that
yeah.
kind of logic, the capital should have been in the Midwest, right?
Mm,
If we look at
mm,
in Samoa, is Samoa in the middle of all the islands of Ha'amoa, the Apia?
no.
No, I would probably say it's highly unlikely that it's at the quote unquote center geographically. Even
Yeah.
New Zealand, right? Do you see this
Mm.
picture right here? Even New Zealand, what the capital is here?
Yep. The tip
Yeah.
of the bottom tip.
That's kind of close. Well, that's kind of close to the middle. So I guess that kind of makes sense. Australia, Fiji, not necessarily in the middle.
Yeah.
You go to
Yeah.
Australia, it's on the eastern coast, not in the
Mhm.
center of the desert. So I just want to say that this oversimplistic idea that just because Ha'amoa is kind of in the middle and there happens to be a place called Tokelau and a place called Tonga, that somehow that is an indicator. Oh, correlation does not mean cause and effect. That's my first thing. The next thing is to go along with what you said.
Mhm.
When the Polynesian Empire first started, we have to look that it was mostly like right here first. This is relatively accepted. We can kind of include Fiji in there,
Yeah.
but it's right here. And like you mentioned, Tonga was the furthest south, right? That was the
Mhm.
cardinal direction. Nothing was really much further south than Tonga. That's why it's called Tonga
Mhm.
Tapu. One could make the argument that they're at the youngest stage of the growth of the empire. You have Tokelau North, that was
Mhm.
maybe the northernmost part of the oldest
Mhm.
part of the civilization and the southernmost. But here's the unique identifier. What was the name of the main island that the Tuitonga lived on? Tonga Tapu,
Mm.
the sacred or the forbidden. Now, a lot of people in Ha'amoa try to challenge that by saying, and honestly, I don't know where this comes from, but they say that Sa is sacred and Moa or something is central. I was like, guys, this is like the Pulimele mound, right? Nobody had that definition of quote unquote Samoa. You were always called Ha'amoa, you right? And then all of a sudden there's this Pulimele that even the people who lived there their whole lives and grew up, who saw what was quote unquote the
Yeah.
Pulimele, said we never heard that word. This was always called the Pa'atonga,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
the reason why Tonga is called Tonga because it was the southernmost, and then the Tonga Tapu because that's where Tangaloa lived.
Yeah.
That is where the Tuitonga resided, and the center, or when we say center, we're not talking about geographic center. We're talking about political power, religious
Yes.
power, and influence was on Tonga Tapu.
Political
So
political consolation. Yeah.
when I hear, I'm not lying, Tongan styles, that's why it's named Tonga South. LOL. It's like, come on, man. Like, let's get past kindergarten in class one, right? Like, just because the sun looks like a light bulb doesn't mean it's a light bulb,
Mm.
so that one, that is kind of interesting there. Let's see
Okay.
what else Chief says. um we came from the north to the south, Tonga, us, the Ha'amoa, Ha'atangaloa, Ha'amaui, we settled Tonga. What is the evidence for that?
Yeah.
There is like little to no evidence, and this is another thing that I find kind of ironic. You know what a lot of people say? Oh, Ha'amoa has all the receipts. You know what all the receipts are? Oral history, which there is a plethora of evidence that oral history is an issue in Ha'amoa because they have a legal system. When you have to have a legal system to navigate your oral history,
Litigate all of that to
litigate that,
find
that
out what's
should,
the truth.
yes, that should be a red flag. That's like, maybe we shouldn't be just totally relying on oral history. Number two, they point to someone who wrote down oral history. And somehow, just because someone recorded oral history, somehow that became receipts. Just because someone wrote down a Kava story from some kalapu somewhere doesn't make it scientific. All the scientific studies that we have looked at, 99.9% of them, if not all of them, point to Tongatapu as the center of the Polynesian Empire. And I
Mm.
kind of get tired of hearing, bring the receipts. I'm tired of bringing receipts. Just bring one receipt, Ha'amoa, as the sacred center of Polynesia. Bring one receipt, and then I will turn to you like Talakai Faiki and say, Mari etoa, you brought one receipt to the table. Congratulations. But so far, I haven't seen one receipt. Any
Yeah.
additional thoughts, Masi, before I go to the next comment?
No, and just reiterate. I'll just reiterate this that we've also looked at the ruins in Ha'amoa from American Samoa to independent Samoa. The only kind of significant ruin we've only seen is the Pulimele, which has a lot of the locals has traced back to being a resident and Tuitonga being heavily influenced in that area. And some of the other like the little Pulimeles, kind of like they call it the Spider Mountain or whatever.
Yes.
They that's all indications leads to pigeon snaring,
Mhm.
Seulupe kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's the only ruins they kind of
Tia
have in
Seulupe.
Ha'amoa.
The name
Yes,
explains itself.
yeah. So there's really no other ruins that that actually identifies to kind of validate Chief's thing as being the original. Because if you were the original, there would be something in Ha'amoa to say that Ha'amonga Maui, some kind of langi in Ha'amoa, but there's so far we found there's zero. So Chiefs, man, this is the important discussion. Help us to find any other studies that we've missed, but Tu and I have actually been very diligent to try to find some ruins to kind of validate Tui Manua, the origin of Ha'amoa, with some of the ruins there. But we've checked all of them. Purimele seems to be the only significant one. The other ones were just pigeon snaring, and that we all know that was a game played by the the Tui Tonga and also by high
Chiefs and
chiefs.
so forth. Yeah.
Correct.
So another one says when the Ha'amoa, Ha'atangaloa, and Ha'amaui reached the south or Tonga, people were already there. The Lapita people, and we enslaved them. They built the Ha'amonga. Tongans are from the Ha'amoa clan. Okay, we will revisit this once again. The Pulemele Mound,
Hmm.
the biggest identifier of the Pulemele Mound was during the height of the Tuitonga, right? Between the 12th century and the 15th century is when the Pulemele Mound was built. Now, they're finding, we talked about if they were able, and then let's say this story is true. The Ha'amoa and the Ha'atangaloa and the Ha'amaui come from Ha'amoa. And they have all this knowledge to not only have military power, political power, but then the ability to organize resources and build monuments. Why can't we find these monuments in Ha'amoa? And the monuments that we have found, even to the first settlement of the Tu'imanua study that we looked at, says that Tu'imanua is only about 500 years old and is roughly around the 1500s. Well, that's still within the prime height of the Tuitonga Empire. That's during Momo and Tu'itatui time. Okay. And Momo and Tu'itatui are the 1, 2, 3, the fourth settlement of the Tu'itonga. So that's at least 8 to 10 generations after Aho'etu. Okay. And so and then a lot of people point to these Lapita settlements. I say there's Lapita settlements and then there's ruins by Polynesians. Don't confuse those. And even in that arena, the oldest Lapita settlement is in Nukuleka right now. Okay. Then on top of that, Chiefs. So we just talked about the monuments, right? There's nothing in Ha'amoa. So it's hard for me to take this Ha'atangaloa, Ha'amaui, who lived in Ha'amoa, came down to Tongatapu and made these things. What's wrong with making them in Ha'amoa first? I would believe it that you would make it in Ha'amoa first before you could go outside. Okay. Yeah. And if they didn't do anything in Ha'amoa, but they started doing it in Tongatapu, well, that means it started in Tongatapu. Okay. Whatever it is, that's why the ruins are very important, right? The other thing I would say, even in Nukuleka, that ditch farming technique of building like a ditch to collect water and a variety of plants planted in that location to endure drought and bad seasons to farm. The oldest location of finding that practice is in Nukuleka on Tongatapu. They say that is a necessary technology and technique in order to survive on these small islands throughout Polynesia. And the oldest one they find there. Then we go to tattooing. Ha'amoa says they have a monopoly on tattooing, but where do we find the oldest tattooing kit in Polynesia? Coincidentally, in Tongatapu. And coincidentally, what's the name of the town? Pea. Which happens to be very close to the Pea. Wonder if there's a connection there. I don't know. Yeah. Right? So once again, Chiefs, This, as far as I can tell, and this is why I'm saying they keep saying bring the receipts. The best that Ha'amoa has is oral history and some stories. That's the best that we've seen.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Mussy, while I go to the next
Yeah.
comment?
No, I'm gonna just say that like even if you're correct though with Ha'amoa, like if there was a Ha'amoa in Tonga, why did why did they go back to Ha'amoa, which is Upolu or Savai and Tutuila to build some ruins if they had that knowledge? You know what I mean? But they didn't build it there because we all said centralize the influence. It's almost like the what is the architect, the Renaissance kind of thing, like the Paris of Europe during that time, or the Venice of the time.
Mhm.
Everything was consolidated in Tongatapu, and only a very few people that had that knowledge to build it there. Like I said, there was a lot of Ha'amoa workers, but they were instructed by the person who knew how to build these significant ruins. And remember, we didn't even touch on the Fonuatanu that many other
Yes.
academic and scholars don't even talk about, because I don't think it's because they have the access to that knowledge, but we're sharing that now, that there needs to be further studies on the Fonuatanu. That's where the Langi Paipaio Terea and Namuala currently sit on. But that has long history of Ha'amoa workers coming, because there's a plot of land that is under our family that reference to the Samoans throwing, when they went to work, throwing their fue when they would come from
Mhm.
Ha'amoa, and their tokotoko on this on this plot of land before they went and kind of help with moving soil to cover the ocean to create new land. So like all of these, and that's the funny thing, all of these ruins and knowledge of empire building or nation building is all within Tongatapu. And if that knowledge was with Ha'amoa chiefs, there would be a lot more evidence of sophisticated ruins in Ha'amoa to prove that. But that's just me. Unless you find something, chiefs, let us know, because Tu and I, we definitely look into all those articles and research, and we share it with everybody, and we have a discussion.
Yes. So appreciate those bringing those questions up. Let's see here. I tried to skim down. Doesn't look like Chiefs has any more comments that we can address. But we do have another question that I'm not 100% sure of the answer here.
Mm.
And Noah says, Noah, welcome to the Digital Kava session. Can you explain how Samoa is a clan of chicken, or Ha'amoa from Tonga? I want to hear the full story, not just one or two sentences. Do you
Mm.
have any understanding behind that, Masi, on the origin?
Of Ha'amoa, I don't know. We kind of talked about it. It could be. Isn't there like a moa in the constellation of stars too, Tua, that has that of people navigating? I just go back to the story of there's a Halafonua. Is it Halafonua Moa? A part in Mua that has a story of people who first brought the moa from New Zealand and came and with the moa and made the name when they first brought the big huge moa from New Zealand to Tonga, to the Tui Tonga. I think it was Toi went to New Zealand, a famous navigator in Tongan oral history.
And brought the
Well,
big, the big moa, the big
big moa
flightless
from
bird.
New Zealand, and they named the road in Mua Halafonua Moa after that chicken, because it was so huge, and the Tui Tonga named it after that. I'm not too sure with the Ha'amoa origin, especially with Upolu, Savai, and Manua and Tutuila. But I don't know if it had something to do. Those are the only two stories I kind of understand at the moment. Is there some navigation purpose for that?
Yes.
The people being named, and also I don't know if a certain group of people brought some moa to Ha'amoa there, and they just named them the Ha'amoa people because maybe they were good at catching the moa in New Zealand. I'm just thinking it out there because those are the only two oral histories I can
Yeah.
I've
You can think
understood
of right
about.
now.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what I understand, and you know, not the greatest in the oral histories, but one of the stories I've heard is there was a really good navigating family, Ha'amoa, and the reason why they were called Ha'amoa, one of their tools, because everybody had different tools, right? Everyone had their own different tools for navigation, and some people it was you get close enough, and they knew certain birds in certain areas during certain seasons. This is why the Ha'amonga was important. The Ha'amonga would track what the seasons were. And so when you were traveling, let's say you were traveling towards Eastern Polynesia, specific island, they would use the stars to get within a certain range. And then they would know at this time of year, you would see this type of bird or type of fish in the sea. And they would help you give indicators of where you would go. Okay. So one of the stories I've heard is there was a group of navigating, or a ha'a, right? One of their tools was the rooster. And the rooster that they would carry with them would help give them direction or for navigating. And that's why they were called the ha'amo, because that was one of the tools they were known for. And you would see, and I remember seeing like an old European explorer in Polynesia. He comes across a karia, and you know what's painted on the la? A rooster, a big rooster.
Interesting.
Okay. So apparently there was a group that had a special, and maybe this is where Ha'amoa gets the nickname. I mean, they say, from the navigator saw all the boats. One could argue that could have been a lot of Tongan boats, but anyways. But that is where the Ha'amoa comes from, is because those navigators had a specific way of using the rooster to help identify land. That's what I heard. That's the story behind that, and that the Tu'i had sent them out. And this was very common. The Tu'i would send out families and also recall them many times, right? Like there's stories of certain families being sent to Uvea and Futuna. And then after a period of time, those families are called back and new families were sent out there to be the governors and to be the guiding. What we do know from all indications is these Ha'amoa people, or especially the ones that went to Manua, because Manua has the rooster or the chicken specifically as their flag and identifying. That family seemed to have a very close relationship with the Tu'i. That's another indicator. But that's, to answer your question, Noah, that's the best that we got.
Yeah. Hopefully that helps, Noah.
Hopefully that helps. Let's see. Here's another one from Noah. The only thing I agree with Polynesian eyes is that some Samoan chiefs got their power from Tu'i, but mostly from Savaii, because Savaii has the weakest links to the Tu'i Manua.
Okay.
Interesting.
The only thing I agree with Polynesians is that some Samoans chiefs got their power from the Tu'i, but mostly from Savaii, because Savaii was the weakest links to the Tu'i Manua. Interesting. What, you have any thoughts on that, Tua?
No, not necessarily. I mean, that's possibly true. What I find interesting about this is when we listen to the story, and this is just so you know, Noah, we come from the perspective that we treat the islands like how each island would treat a village, right? We look at the Polynesian like triangle here as one country. And each island, it's like its own little village. And each little village develops its own little speaking style, its own little dancing style and variety. But at the end of the day, they were all under and related to the Tu'i. Our perspective is there was nothing that in the Polynesian Empire that wasn't subject to the Tu'i. And yes, the Tu'i went to Savaii a lot, apparently, but it's not because he did not have the Tu'i Manua under his realm. It seems to be out of respect, out of a close family tie, that was out of, and people take that as, oh, the Tu'i Tonga could never conquer the Tu'i Manua. Are you kidding me? The Tu'i Manua is like on the smallest of islands, and if the Tu'i Tonga really wanted to conquer the Tu'i Manua, it would have happened, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Unless the Tu'i Manua had a big red button that had nuclear weapons on his on his island, but that is all under the Tu'i Tonga. And what I was going to say earlier was in William Mariner's book, after Ulukalala destroys or kills Tukuaho, where do a majority of the chiefs in Ha'apai and Vava'u go to?
Ha'amoa.
They all go to Ha'amoa. This was all one nation, even when it was fragmented, because everybody was interrelated. But that's my thoughts on that. Must anything else to that?
Yeah, I'm going to challenge this a little bit, Noah, because I wouldn't say Savai, because even Upolu has strong Tu'i Tonga ties. There's a place in Upolu that's called they call it Saina, but it's from the origin of that Saina. It's Sa-ina, meaning tapu henna, like it's forbidding there. And a lot of the origin of that place comes from the Tu'i Tonga, when he would go from Savai to Upolu and he would rest there, and it was forbidden for the people of Upolu to go, because it was forbidden Sa-ina, which is go around where the Tu'i Tonga was at. And that village still exists today, and some people don't really understand the meaning of it, but it's Sa-ina, meaning tapu like, fe aluaki kind of thing, like tapu henna kind of thing, what they use in Tonga. But Sa-ina means that's forbidding there. And here's another evidence to that, Tua. That Saina, usually the fa'alupenga is a greeting of certain villages with titles in all parts of Ha'amoa, in Upolu and Savai and Tutuila and all parts of Samoa, that somebody went around the whole villages and started recording of how they greet each family and prominent families from different villages. Saina doesn't have a fa'alupenga. They just had that Saina. They just put that with another village that's close by, but that village didn't have any fa'alupenga, because that was a residence of a Tu'i Tonga. And it was only a time when he would go and have a resting place in Upolu, and that place was specifically for the Tu'i Tonga to rest at. And then that was forbidding for people just to go and like walk around, walk past, because it was which is
tapu.
tapu. Yeah.
No, that's a really interesting little nuance, right? And these are this is the other thing too. And I know Noah also says he's a Tu'i Manua believer. The assumption, meaning, I assume, Noah, that you say you believe that Tu'i Manua had an empire, right? Even in the oral history in Ha'amoa, there was only one Tu'i Manua that united the Western Islands in Ha'amoa. One generation. Okay? Very difficult for me to believe that if the Tu'i Manua was this massive empire, that you only have, even within the oral history, which is challenged significantly, that only one Tu'i Manua. And then what makes it even more challenging is there is a lot of oral history that over 50% of the Tu'i Manua were female.
Yeah.
Right?
That's why they can't keep track of how many Tu'i Manua title holders, because that's really difficult, right?
Yes.
When you have certain females, and then when they have marriages to various other people, like, where do they end up going to? But yeah, that's why it's hard to track it.
It's hard to track. And then here's the other thing. We're being told by a lot of oral history, even in Manua, supposedly, with some of the scholars who went there, Kaulfo Nua Fekai who was the Tu'i Tonga. He decided to take upon himself the Tu'i Manua title.
Yes.
Because his mother was a Tu'i Manua Fefine, and he took the title over, which is why they went to Ha'amoa for 5 generations. So to say that they only had links to Savai would be incorrect according to some of the oral history, because the Tu'i Manua title was inherited at some points with the Tu'i Tonga because of the decentralized nature of Ha'amoa power structures, which was put that way by the Tu'i Tonga to ensure no one in Ha'amoa could consolidate power, right? Just like it was set up the same way in Uvea and Futuna, where it would
Mm,
rotate between families. The Tu'i Manua wouldn't even be father to son, father to son. It would rotate
correct.
between a member of the Manua
Yes.
Islands.
Yeah.
So, which would be another thing. This is why, there is this conflict. There's a story about, and I was commenting on it earlier, of a guy from Micronesia who was saying how his island was settled by that from people from Manua, and it was from two brothers who challenged each other for the
Yeah.
title of being king. Well, it could have been not necessarily two brothers, but two cousins from two different families, that which family was going to be the next Tu'i Manua. This was not an issue that the Tu'i Tonga faced. It was very clear it had to be father to son, father to son. Very few and very rare instances that the Tu'i Tonga had that didn't have a father to son line of inheritance.
Yeah. Which that new, what is it? New Tamato is the
New
only
Tamato,
oral history that we have.
yes.
Yeah.
See, this is the kind of stuff that kind of makes me doubt chiefs. People think Ha'amoa means clan of chicken, but the original name is Ha'amoana. So yeah, the Ha'amoana settled Tonga and enslaved Masi'i chiefs. This is the problem with oral history. I'm gonna have to take you to the oral history courts in Ha'amoa on this one.
Get a
Because I don't
litigation
know. Yeah, we're
deal.
gonna have to litigate this. All of a
We have to
sudden, we go ahead, Masi.
No, I would say we have to take them to the Palangi courts to figure out our origin history. That doesn't make sense to me, Tua. We can't have a Talanoa in the Tanoa and discuss this, but looks like that's the problem, right? And that's the problem with navigating oral history, because there's so many and we don't know which one is the accurate one. But you know, looks like Chief has a million of them that needs to be litigated, and maybe that's why the Palangi courts exist
See,
in Ha'amoa. Eh?
Chiefs, this is why Disney chose Moana as the main character because of the Moana. I mean, it's hard for me to kind of take this seriously, Chiefs.
But we
Maybe I could be
appreciate
wrong.
your involvement in your comments, Chiefs Malo.
Here, to me, this is a more interesting question by Noah here,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Tu'i Manua and Tu'i Tonga are equal, even as direct descendants of Tangaloa, like Tu'i Manua are famous for being direct descendants of Tangaloa Langi in Samoa. Any
mm.
thoughts on this one, Mr. Atearoa?
No, and that's some of the discussion we've kind of had, Tua, right, with the Tui Manua. We feel like it was a close direct descendant, like a sibling of the inheritor, or the person that inherited the Tui Tonga title. That
Mm-hmm.
seems like that something happened, or I don't know, that's that made the person with close ties to the Tui Tonga go to Manua and become the Tui Manua um, title that was created. I know there's a sibling of ours, Denny. He's kind of Nella. He's kind of thinking that the Tui Manua kind of started maybe right before the first Tui Tonga, Aho Etu. That's when it was kind of started. That's his understanding, but I don't know. I'm kind of more during the later Tui Tonga line. I don't know if it goes that far back, because it seems like human activity from that research we've kind of saw, Tua, that it seems to be around that Tui Tonga, when the Tui Tonga was at
Timeline.
its peak. Yes, at
Yeah.
its height. That kind of when the Tui Manua became a relevant figure in the Polynesian nation. So it I don't know if it was as equal, because if we go by what Xiaoxi Ilayu says, it was from the mother, and then he inherited that title, but he always was referenced as the Tui Tonga, because that's a even higher title from his father. It could be something like that. If it was as equal, maybe it will maybe equal as a respectful way, but not by influence, not by far. Tui Tonga by far had the wider influence, and their stories throughout Polynesia, and even up to, we're not, remember, and we're going to other ethnic people when we're talking about going to Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, and Papua New Guinea, of having references to the Tuitonga. This is like a different class of people. So that's me. Not as equal in influence, but equal maybe in a respectful way, because there seems to be some respectful showcase from the Tuitonga during the peak of the empire of the Tuitonga Empire to the Tui Manua. So I feel like it could be a sibling thing or something happened. But I don't know about you, Tua. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't question that they more than likely were both descendants from
Mm,
Tangaloa. Just because Tangaloa, that's what made you Eiki back in the day, is you
yeah.
descended from Tangaloa. Now, descendant and being the heir are two different things, which is kind of like what you're kind of mentioning, right?
Mm,
Could have descended from Tangaloa, but one who's the heir and one who's not the heir, there's a huge difference in power and influence. Just
mm,
like Aho'eitu. Aho'eitu was the youngest, but Tangaloa made him the heir,
correct.
which means he gets all the recognition, the prestige, and the older siblings serve the younger sibling. Now that's
Get
usually
lesser
kind of a
titles.
rare
Correct.
situation, but
Mm,
that to me, I think, yeah, they both come from Tangaloa. What I find interesting is, according to some of the people we spoke with, the Tangaloa we speak of is the Tangaloa who came and founded the Polynesian Empire with the Ha'amaui and the Ta'ataula. The oral history that I've been told, and granted, there's many versions of it, is the Tangaloa title in Ha'amoa.
mm,
Supposedly, Tangaloa liked a guy's wife and then
mm.
gave his title of Tangaloa to the guy in order to have his wife. So if that were true, then really the Tangaloa name in Ha'amoa is not the quote unquote blood title. It
Mm.
it was a title that was given. So that's the weird thing. Just like the Tonga Fusifonua,
The
he
story of
gets
the Maui Hook.
he gets basically his wife betrays him, and that's
Yeah.
how Maui gets the hook. What's the deal with all the spouse betrayal in some of these oral histories? I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Tonga Fusifonua is basically deceived or sold out by his own wife, and that's how Tonga comes up. Tangaloa likes someone else's wife, and then he gives away his whole title to have the guy's wife. I don't know. It just seems like these are Kava stories to
Interesting.
me. You know, this is why
Very
we
interesting.
appreciate oral history, but we also know oral history has some weakness, which is why it's nice to have oral history that has some scientific backing, some monuments, some
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 ruins. Uh,
ruins. Kind of
mm.
helps us
Oh,
know, like, is this a Kalapu fake
yeah.
story or not?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So let's see here. Let me see. I think we may have answered the majority of these. There's other lot of comments, lot of activity. Appreciate
Nice.
all the comments and
We
activity
love the
online.
discussion. Yeah.
Um, what do you know about this, Masi? We have a thing called the Langi Tuiva, or the Nine Heavens, or Nine Mountains, obviously leading from eastern Upolu to Manua.
I don't know about too much about this Dua with Noah's comment here. It's another oral story in Ha'amoa regarding the heavens, and the Lu and Tangaloa traveling through these different realms of heavens kind of thing. It's just another oral story. I'm not too um well versed in that specific oral history or story, but I've kind of heard of it. But I just know it's another oral story. But yeah. And it
Okay.
depends which Ha'amoa is explaining it, because there's some people there's nine, and there's some people there's only three or two. Like it
We,
depends.
we, we're going
Yeah.
to have to go to the oral history courts. Whether
No,
it's,
that's
are
maybe
these
like Chief. We
only,
might have to take it to Upolu. I think the Supreme Court is in Murifanua, where the Parliament is at, and get that litigated in the
uh,
Supreme Court in Upolu.
yeah. And well, I don't know if we're able to get it through when they have their own issues. The Supreme Court needs to take care of the prime minister issues that
Oh
are
yeah,
going
the
on first. So we
domestic.
might be second on the docket. So Here's another one. See, this is the kind of stuff that makes it interesting.
Mm.
What happened to the lapita when we, okay, I don't know who's we. Were you there, Chiefs? Reached South Lapita. Were there we enslaved and killed them. That's why there's no lapita in Tonga. Mind you, lapita were black people. We were brown. I thought you said earlier that you enslaved them, and that's who we had to build all the mounds over there in the langis. I don't know.
I'm
That's
not too sure. Not too sure with this one, Chiefs. It looks like I'm not too sure where you're going with this, but who knows? I don't know if you had anything else to.
yeah. So last one, and then we'll go back, get on track. We got a little sidetrack, but I saw the comments here. Some of them are
Yeah,
pretty
we like
related to some of our
Oh,
comments
this is the same.
online.
Yeah. This is a good one. This looks like a interesting
Yeah.
one.
Says
Also,
Noah says,
Sa, yeah.
yeah, go ahead, Mashi, read it out.
So Noah comments. Also, Sa means clan. If you look at Savai, it means clan of Vai. Sounds like Vahi, and all you have to do is add the he, which is Vahi, homeland of Vahi. Oh, that's a good question. If you go like if you Savai, right? Tua? If you go change that, go Ha'a Vahi. That could be a that could be a
That seems to
good.
match some of our
eh,
positions. Yeah.
we don't have like solid evidence, but we're just saying very likely you can put the two together, 1 plus 1 equal 2, and say that's probably a reference to the
Vaihi.
Vaihi. So these are the Ha'avaihi, and then over time it's just called Savai. But that's what I got from Noah's comment. But that's a good comment. I don't
Yeah,
know if you
read
had
this.
anything
Read
else,
this.
Tua.
It seems to be related to it as well.
Okay, so Noah continues. Could Vaihi you claim to be original home of Tangaloa and Maui could have any connection to Savai? Even a Tongan Vaihi is northeast, which is literally Savai. To me, this is Vaihi is where the Tangaloa, Ha'a Maui, and the Ha'a Taula came from to kind of establish the Polynesian nation. Um, and to me, Savai is just a reference to those Ha'a, the Hawaii coming from those places. So that's just me. I'm not too sure with what Noah means to with Tongan Vahi is northeast, which is literally Sabai. I know in Tonga there's many names, and maybe that's one episode we can do with Tevita Fale to maybe get a map out and just record exactly where the Vahi reference all over in Tongatapu. I think there's some in Va'u and Ha'abai. That's maybe for a
Mhm.
future episode too that we can try get Tevita Fale just to
Collect that
point it out,
information.
point
Yeah.
that information because he has mentioned there's a lot of names of Vahi. There's even a Vahi here in Aotearoa in New Zealand. So
Yeah.
there
It's
you go.
throughout Eastern Polynesia, Hawaii. That's where
Correct.
Hawaii, the big
It
island, is named
yes
after,
is
right?
Vahi. Yeah.
And I will say this, Noah. I agree. I agree that the potential interpretation of Savai'i, we believe that that's a reference to Waihi. And that's where Hawaii gets its name, Ha'a, Waihi,
Mm,
right? Hawaii, on the Big Island. The only thing that I would say that challenges your position here strongly, Noah, is this: Tongan oral history says Waihi is the far, far away land,
mm,
the motherland, right? But it's far, far away. Going from Tongatapu to Savai'i was literally for us like getting in the car and driving up to Walmart.
yeah.
Okay, we wouldn't reference if the Tongans came from Savai'i, we wouldn't reference Savai'i, that is a day and a half journey for our ancestors, as the far, far away land, when we know they were traveling to New Zealand, they were traveling all the way to Southeast Asia, they were traveling to the Americas, they were traveling up to Hawaii, and even going to Hawaii, they would never say that that's the far, far away land, right?
Mm,
It has to be significantly far away, not a day and a half journey. So that would be kind of my biggest question mark, though I probably would say your interpretation of Savai'i seems to make sense because it matches other places. like Hawaii, where you could literally say that Hawaii is Hawaii, right?
Yes.
Just like Savai'i, like you're interpreting here.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. That's my thoughts
Good
there.
question.
So,
Good question
yes.
though, Noah.
All right. This is a good one. This is a good
Ooh.
one here that we're gonna go to
Ooh.
next. This is part of the program. We
Ooh.
are very familiar with this character here. I think a lot of people are familiar with King Afa, right? Some of the
Mm-hmm.
you either love him or hate him. A lot of people hate
Mm-hmm.
him. We like it. We like he puts out content, gives us stuff to react to. We've reacted to some of King Afa's content, but this is a very interesting one. Um, and I think this is an interesting thing here. So this is Tuione Pulotu, very well known carver, traditional Polynesian carver. I think he's probably the most decorated
Yes.
Polynesian carver
Ev-
alive. Is that pretty
Alive that
safe to
we.
say?
Yes. 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 I mean, I don't know anyone to maybe since. Whew, you're talking maybe since the 1800s, like somebody that was, But Tuyone, he's a big deal throughout Polynesia and outside of Polynesia circles. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is an interesting interview here. So we're gonna just do a quick reaction to it, and we'll go from there.
Hmm.
I don't do what the covers do. I don't do tiki anymore because they are doing it. And if somebody come in specifically and ask for a particular tiki to make for them, I'll make it. But 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 I don't compete with them. I don't do what they do. So I make my own. Uh, we we try to avoid using aqua, the god thing. We just refer to them as tiki. It's a statue.
Wayu posisi kita lang.
They do have some Hawaiian guys too. They, but I think I know more about doing Hawaiian stuff than any Hawaiian around.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think.
because I have built Hawaiian really complete Hawaiian village out there in Tanzania for this lady, and I did all the Hawaiian building in the PCC.
Posisi.
You know, I know all the
Polynesian countries.
Yeah. all the kind of stuff. I can do all the different Polynesian stuff, building or whatever it is. I can do that. Just for me, I already I don't have to see a book or anything that I know.
Ko akau ko ni sukumete ko hai akau ko.
Cassia,
Kasi ya.
nice. I had some nice pieces of this. The cassia come in two kind. One is the dark one and one is a light one. This is the dark one. See all the grainy stuff.
Any initial thoughts
Awesome.
on that, Masi?
Well, the one that caught my attention to is I know everything here. I don't need the Hawaiian. When he says he needs to build some Hawaiian structure or their tikis or some of their stuff because he's done it all. And he asked him, "How does he know?" He's like, "I just have it in here." He sounds like to me to Haatufunga for the Tuitonga. Like you
That's
know
what
what
I
I
was
mean?
thinking. Yeah.
He sounds like he is the he actually has built entire Hawaiian structures in Polynesian Culture Center, which is probably the number one tourist attraction in Hawaii. And then he's built many other Hawaiian structures for other Hawaiians. And he just some people, and it just reminds me of Tevita Fale when people always ask him, "What's your reference? What's your degree?" and all these things. He's like, it's just all in here. It's either you have it or you don't. And that is just so that is so that just speaks of somebody who's never been colonized. Only who no other Polynesian part of people would ever say, because you've had a broken knowledge somewhere, and you're not too sure with a Polynesian neighbor if that's how they do things. But when you're the when you he's speaking like somebody that comes from the center of the empire, everything has come, with dances or even certain ways have come down to you. It's gonna be funneled to you. You can go ahead and build it. And I just find that very, very, very Tongan for him to say it's all up in here. I don't have to speak to any Hawaiian or even like a Maori, especially the ones, Maori expert or Hawaiian expert. He can just say, I just know what they're doing. If and that comes only from a, a place that's never been colonized, and that's why he's just very confident. And there's many other Tongans and there's many other Tongans that have certain knowledges that I think, especially our relatives like Tahiti and French that are under French Polynesia, Hawaii, and even here in New Zealand with the Maoris, that they can benefit of a lot if there was a lot more integration, especially with people from Tonga Tapu and from Tonga. As we're a Polynesian nation, and the Polynesian culture can be very revived in certain aspects of today in Hawaiian culture, Maori culture, or even Tahiti that can be revived that was lost. So, and Tuyone is one of those few gentlemen that can help with that. So that's just me, Tua. I don't know if you had anything else.
Yeah, some of the thoughts that came to my mind here is this is a classic modern example of Ha'atufunga and how it functioned,
Mm,
right? If we wanted to get an understanding of let's go back to the example of Captain Cook,
mm,
where the Tongans set up that he said it was like 80 feet in the air
yeah.
in like less than a couple minutes. They're there for the Inasi, and within a command and within a couple minutes, the Ha'atufunga, whose their specialty is building these structures, in a matter of minutes, using bamboo, build a structure that is like 60 feet high and
Mm,
holds hundreds of pounds of food like this. That is what we call specialization, right? In the Western world, people like Mr. Ford developed the assembly line and developed specialization. Means you got really good at doing these really good
mm,
from practice and doing it over and over and over and over again. We had that specialization in different skill sets. It just was exercised a little bit differently. Rather, in the open market, it was held within families, and families within families developed that special skill, right? And that is a prime example of Tuyone Pulotu right there, right?
mm,
He took that ancient skill and developed it over in a modern setting, but
mm,
it's the same idea as our Ha'atufunga had. And this
mm,
is where I'm getting to as to so many examples of why Tonga was the center of the empire, because you have all those specialties across the board. Because of unified power and structure, you had that. And this is why certain families, and this may be the reason, we mentioned earlier, Masi, that certain families would be sent, right?
yeah.
And then called back, and other families would be sent. Who is to say that a certain family, hey, these group of islands, we need to develop this skill set over there, which is literally
Mm,
what happened. What
mm,
happened when they found the right wood to do the kalias in Fiji?
yeah.
We sent
Then,
families who were
yeah.
boat builders, says, hey,
Live in
go and
Fiji.
develop that production plant. You
Yeah.
basically made it a production plant.
Yeah.
Send over the families who have the skill sets. That tufunga, you go there because that's where the resources are. We also have identified that in Ha'amoa was the stone axe, right? And that was like they found like little production plants on throughout Ha'amoa with the lava stone.
Mm,
And they've done the studies. I've read through the studies where they found like little areas, like that's what they specialized in. They were just making these stone axes over and
mm,
over, and then they were shipped everywhere. A lot of that is expressed through how Tongatapu and the Tu'i Tonga was structured. We don't find that with the Tu'i Manua. We don't find that with Marietoa. We don't find that with any of the, something Fa, or the different clans in Ha'amoa that unified all of Ha'amoa to produce that kind of specialization. We don't find that there,
Mm,
and that's actually true of throughout Polynesia. There's only one place that we find that, and that is on Tongatapu.
yeah, no, great point, Tua. Great point. But hey, it's I love I love Tuyone Puloto in this comment. It just reminds me of the old school, and I just cherish those kind of thinkers, Tua, because they're getting to that age, that 70 and up, and they're, it's once that era is done, it's just gonna be the next generation to see, who steps up and to maintain that knowledge. But man, I just enjoyed that video. It was funny.
Here's a comment, Masi. What are your thoughts? He says they do have it in Ha'amoa. That specialization, I think, is what he's referencing. In the tattoo.
Specialization in the tattoo.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, regarding the specialization of tufunga, especially in tattooing. Yeah, I mean, there were tufungas in Tonga, but right when the empire, just to answer T's question, when the Tongan Empire and influence shrunk with Tupo the First, creating the modern Tonga, and then he did his because I believe Tupo the First also had a Tatatau too on him,
Yes.
and he, being believer in the new religion, he banned it, and then obviously Tonga being under his authority per se, all all kind of lost that knowledge of that tufunga in Tonga. But and that's the good thing about the Ha'amoa system, right? When you're different, when you've never consolidated into one single power, and they've been colonized through Germany, and also with
The U.S.
Britain, the Britain and the U.S. They were able to decentralize power, so there were certain families that still maintain the art of Tada Tau tea. So that's why it's still being revived today, and it's popular in Ha'amoa. Um, that's that's just my answer to that. To me, there's a little. I don't agree with the some of this nuance they're creating to say that it's all about the tautua in order to receive it or anything. I'm not believing into that hysteria tua with the whole. There's certain ceremonies with the tautua, and you gotta be service. To me, if you wanted to get one back in the days, is if you wanted to get one and the tufunga was willing to put it on you, you were allowed. You would go ahead and can get it, and then you get elevated through the tufunga if you got somebody that was well known in a certain specific skill or rank, and go ahead and get it. To me, I don't the whole that they're saying tautua like the service, what the Hamoas say, but now it's kind of morphed into their identity, especially with Polynesians outside of their islands, and it's kind of morphed into that. And to me, personally, there's a lot more important aspects of the culture that can identify your identity. But some people are different. They want to be inked so they can feel more, I guess,
Polynesian.
Polynesian. They, that's just
So be
that's
it.
their personal view. But to me, it's a it, to me that's a easy way to do it. There's a lot of more intrigue, like tough Polynesian cultural things that you can learn of, and takes probably a lot more time to really understand, and you can really understand the whole grind of what being a Polynesian is than getting ink. That's just my opinion, because to me, if it was really important, if it was really that important, that would Doubtful would do it. I think Doubtful wouldn't do something if he felt like it was something I wanted to get and it looked good. Faimota, like, give it to me. That's what I think it was. But it's morphed into, and like I said, the tufungas need to eat. They can't be a tufunga tatatau and not have a regular job. So that is their job, and it's morphed into a certain way to make you feel like, especially the ones who are not have a solid identity of who they are, to get one. So that's just me, Tua. I don't know. You
No,
can have
100%. That
your
Tofunga's got to
understanding
eat
of that.
too. And if that's what will allow him to specialize, of course he's going to make it into a big big whole event because that makes it more likely for him to take care of his family. It's not
Correct.
the Tufunga's fault, right? He's going to take advantage of it. So
Yeah.
this topic here is not on our schedule, but I thought maybe it's worthwhile because it's an interesting question. What are you? Hey, I've
Okay,
got a
you want me to read
subject.
this?
Thank you, NLJNL. But go ahead, Masi, read this one.
All right. So this is NLJNL's comment here. Hey, I've got a subject we can talk about. I like it. Let's talk about the Chinese in Tonga right now and how that changed the country since they started moving in. Dua, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, yes, whenever you have an influx of a group of people, it's going to have an impact, right? Um, for right now, just because the way the laws are structured in Tonga, I don't see it as a huge threat, right? Because they really can't own land. They really can't do a lot of that. Like it's not a
Mm,
quote unquote threat, but I agree it has an impact. I think the first human trafficking incident was with Chinese
mm,
there, so there are some issues there. But I think overall, if I were to say, is it a net positive or a net negative, I'd probably lean towards a net positive, in my opinion, because they do bring, access to goods from China that as long as it's not, food
mm,
goods, if it's
mm,
mostly like not food products, but just kind of general products, I think it really helps the people, in my opinion. You could always make the argument of, oh, it hurts our local businesses. Yes and no, but if Tonga wants to protect that, then take a book out of Uncle Donald's tariff scheme, and we can impose some tariffs if we want to, if we want to help protect the local businesses a little bit more. But I recognize there's a change. But if I were to say net positive or negative, I lean towards it's a net positive overall, in my opinion.
mm. Yeah. Just my addition here. I don't think it's a big deal. NLJNL. To me, it's not a big deal. Like some of the overseas people are making it. One, they are leasing land with a Tongan. So in order for them, a lot of these Chinese are partnering with Tongans who have land, leasing it to the Tongan, leasing it to the Chinese, and the Chinese are paying the Tongan guy. And then to me, it's a discussion of if that Tongan guy is probably getting ripped off for what he's paid, then that's his problem because at the end of the day, he's the one negotiating, and he's probably didn't have a good representative, or he's not representing uh, his argument or his the price for that land, and that's his problem. But to me, I don't think there's a huge issue. I know economically with money wise, and they're doing business. The Chinese apparently there's a data they I guess the money flow to us like 60% or something, the Chinese businessmen, but I don't know about that. That's just that's what people are talking about. But to me, it's the structure right now with us not letting Chinese have land. They can use the land for, I believe you can go up to 99 years
On
to
a
lease
lease, yeah.
on a lease. To me, that is fine as long as they can't own it. We should be fine at the moment. There's been changes, of course, with some, with Chinese being in Tonga. There's introduction of the way they do things that are probably different from what Tongans do. The amount of vegetables and maybe even the whole sapasui thing without the Chinese being introduced to to uh, to Tonga and even Samoa. We the word the important food that's been part of the Polynesian meal, sapasui, is a Chinese introduced. So the Chinese have introduced good stuff. As long as we don't change land regarding the laws of the land with ownership, I think we should be fine. So that's just my comment there. Tua.
Yeah. And really, if new, we got to take a book out of our ancestors, man. When new challenges arise, we got to
Mm,
think out of the box. We got to look at what's best for us, how to take the good, try and minimize the bad. And you know what the number one thing is also NLJNL? Ai lo tu ke mo'oni. You know, say ai lo tu ke mo'oni. And actually, with that being said, let's kind of circle back
Mm,
to one of, let me see if I can find it. One of the princess's video comments speaking about that.
okay.
Let's see. Let's share this tab. And I think that's an important thing. As long as we remember that ai lo tu ke mo'oni, just like the tuku fonua, everything will work out. And then we can have Chinese food and Tongan food at the same time.
Koe whaka hame ai ai maman.
Mm,
E sai e whai ngofua. Mea ko tope maman o mahu inga o ngā wei tak whai ngata. O swa mo oni ai mea kuia. Ka pareu ke hame e whai ngofua. Ta koe koe mea mo oni. Pa koe ko hame ai a kurerei. Koe mea ai a o tau lotu ai. Koe tau hoko sia koe tau whetau lak mo i whai ngata. Tau kore ke toko taha koe orunga. Ke toko ni mai kia tau tolu. Ke whakawhai ngofua. Pakapaure wa ton pe ke te au ki te hala whai ngata ko ia eik. Pake ompe haiwi kia te au. Ta whi au pe. O te ke tuange au ke lue toko taha.
I mean, at the end of the day, you can't argue with that type of
mm,
advice.
mm,
You know,
mm.
if there's certain risks with the Chinese, there's certain risk with everything. If you're taking money from the US, you're gonna get certain US risks, you know? But
Mm.
at the end of the day, let's remember what got us here, and that is God. You know, you can't forget about that. I think that's a really important part.
Yeah.
But looks like quick translation NLJNL is don't forget to pray. We're at the end of
Mm,
the day, if things are tough, things are hard, but we're a people of faith. And I will say this until I am proven clearly otherwise. Hikuleo is the same God that we pray to today. The God that took Tangaloa and Maui and the Taula to Tonga Tapu to start the Polynesian Empire is the same God that we worship today. Different name, different interaction, but from my perspective, the same being.
mm.
So, anything to add to that, Masi, or we go to the next one?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, with the whole Chinese, I think I wanted to share. I couldn't get the statistics here, but the recent statistics came that I think that man, it was like the amount of Chinese that are in Tonga is like maybe 3-4% in Tonga or 5. It's not much.
So, a very
So
small percentage.
very, very small. So, you know, when you go to Tonga, of course you're gonna see the Chinese with the stores and stuff. But like I said, if you're going as a tourist, then I guess you're going there. But like what Pilolevu was saying, if you're returning Tonga to go back home and stuff, you know, Tonga is still Tonga. So, you know, Tonga is still Tonga. We don't have to worry about the Chinese. They're like I said, they're coming to Kum. What are we all Tongans doing in overseas from Tonga? We're kumi mo'ui lere. The Chinese are leaving China. And now kumi ha now whanga maare mo na mo'ui lere. So, us being it's the same kind of method, and we just have to make sure our laws are enforced and protected, and that doesn't change, and then they can still be Kuminaw Fangamari, Kuminaw Lere, looking for their opportunity to do well with the current laws in Tonga, and that's fine. But yeah.
Here's my closing comment for that NLJNL. We can't say anything about the Chinese in Tonga because we're living in a foreign land right now. if we're gonna complain about the Chinese in
That's
Tonga,
the fact, man. Yeah.
then we shouldn't be living overseas. Mr.
Yeah.
Atearoa is gonna have to head back to Tonga. I'm gonna have to leave Texas or the US and go back to Tonga because under that type of thinking, I guess then no Tongan should be living outside of Tonga.
Yeah. 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 But it's a good one. Yeah, it's a good one. Good one. But good question though. NLJNL. Malo.
So malo. So our next actually this is our last topic for the evening is kind of interesting. And Mr. Atearoa was the first one to kind of bring this up. This is a fearless striker. We're going to look at a video he used, but using some of our content. We're also seeing a lot of our content with other content creators online, which is kind of cool,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it sounds like maybe some people are finding some value in what we share. I think if we were to add up all of our views from the last year, we may have broken 1 million views, right? So for the big channels, that's probably Mickey Mouse for them. But for us, and this is 1 million views over all of our social media. But for us, hey, that's not bad. We're proud of it. We don't mind starting from the ground up. This is something we do because we enjoy it and we think it adds value to have a Kava discussion, and gives opportunity, like was it Chief and Noah earlier,
Noah.
who
Yep.
asked questions
Share.
about the Tu'i Manua, talk about it. This is the whole point. I mean, we're all one people. We are all Polynesians, and some people want to say the Moana Empire rather than the Polynesian Empire.
Ooh, let's talk about
You
that.
know?
Tua, what do you
Yeah,
think? What do you think? What do you
I
think of
don't
that?
mind
What
it.
term?
I don't mind
Okay.
it. I'm not necessarily against it.
Okay.
I think it would look great on a T-shirt. Moana Empire. Don't
Okay.
have an issue with it. Tongan Empire, Polynesian Empire.
Or-
I think
Okay.
I'm okay with it. What are your thoughts?
I'm just gonna share here. I like to stick with the heritage part because it's a specific people. The Moana, if you want to go Moana, the Pacific Ocean kind of goes all the way to Japan, can go all the way to to different places. So I don't know. I'm fine with that Moana because to me, Moana is just a vast. To me, the definition is more like vast, big ocean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vast, big ocean. But I like to think. I think to make us more unique. I think unless we come with a better word, I don't know if Moana's the word, Dua, just to me, because it's just a reference to, Polynesian languages. It's all a reference to a vast ocean, very big body, massive ocean. And that connects to, that even goes to all the way to like, all different parts of, even Japan, Korea, up to China. It's too vast. I think, this is just me. I just like to think of us being a specific unit people. That's why I like the Polynesian Empire or Polynesian nation. So that's just me. I'm just thinking it more of our heritage, which is makes us unique, makes us who we are now. That's just me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, here's an interesting comment on that is the Tu'i Empire, right?
The Tui
Because it is the
empires,
Tu'i
yeah,
Tonga that seems to be a line,
Tui
you
seems to
know.
be like a people with that Tui seems to be a high title holder because there's a lot of Tui Ana, Tui,
Yeah.
in the Samoa. There's a lot of the Tui, of course the Tui Tonga. But hey, I
That,
I like
that
that one.
might
I
make
just like it.
sense. Yeah.
I like a name to be focused specifically on our heritage or culture because the Moana is, yes, we were the best navigators, but like to me, the Moana literally just
Too
means
broad.
too broad. It literally means massive ocean, and that vast Pacific Ocean, you're going all the way up to Asia, up to Antarctica. Like it's too broad to me, but
Mm.
yeah, I like
Yeah.
to focus on our heritage and our unique culture.
Not
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of interesting. We'll see. I do kind of like the Tu'i Empire because that
Mm,
is
yeah,
primarily a
mm,
Polynesian feature term.
yeah.
So that could be interesting. Maria, Malo.
Malo
Okay,
Polynesian
so
Prince.
with coming back to our last segment,
Okay.
um, we're seeing a lot more people using our content, and we like that. We do the same thing with Kava University and the great work that he does with William Mariner. So we are by all means, we don't be like, oh, that's our content. You can't use that. We don't want to be those people who cry appropriation.
Mm,
We're putting it out there. We just want people to talk. We just want more people talking about our heritage, our history, our people, and not just quote unquote Tongan, but kind of that Polynesian, that Tu'i kind of
Mm.
culture,
Mhm.
Moana culture, whatever that is. I think we have a lot to be proud of, and we have to really talk about it more because it's really important to us. Um, oh, here's a, you know what, Renegade? That is a great question. We'll make that
What's up?
our last or closing one. Oh, looks like there's a couple more questions. We'll finish this segment and then we'll close out. Looks like there's a couple questions I'm seeing popping up in the comments, Masi. But
Okay.
this is one of the videos um, that Fearless Striker. He's pretty active on social media. Seems like he does a lot of great work online. So he did do a video edit of some of our content. And I think this is an important question because some people laugh at this. You know, they're kind of laughing. What? Who cares? This is like a stupid question. I was like, well, it's stupid if you don't know, I guess. You know, I mean, why you? But let's take a look at it real quick and then kind of do a reaction.
All right.
Question was, what are you doing? Eh? Like, why are you here? And Captain Cook says, of all the islands they visited, this was the only island that asked me what I was doing there. And your thoughts on why you think that stuck out to Captain Cook, and why do you think the Tuitonga asked him that question?
Well, I think because when, especially Balangis or Caucasians would go to other Pacific islands, it was a wow factor. They were surprised and stuff. But apparently, because Tonga and because of how it was structured, there was a lot of navigation. So seeing different kind of people and interacting with different kind of people, Tongans were not too surprised, especially the ones like the Tuitonga leadership and people with high status, because they were used to meeting with non-Polynesians or people outside of the Pacific realm. Because I've heard Tongans out of all the Pacific islands where we were used to engaging with non-Polynesian.
What are your thoughts, Mr. Atearoa? Why is that such an important question that we thought it was important to talk about that?
Yeah, because it just shows the rank of it shows the understanding and the knowledge of there's a world bigger than the island that the Tuitonga specifically had. Because what was the Tuitonga doing? Because their stories, I think we've talked to Daniela about it, Tua, where there's some stories that Maui, maybe with some Tuitonga title holders, or they were not Tuitonga yet, or whatever, making it all the way out to Japan and getting some, you know, some understanding to Asia, and getting like some of the headdress, kind of the symbol of the
The Maui
headdress.
Kisi Kisi, and that's where that
Maui
name comes
Kisi,
from.
yes, comes from. So, and not only that, just to add on top of that, Tua, where was the most shipwrecked of European boats in all of Polynesia? That
Yes.
happened. That happened in pretty much in Ewa, Tongatapu, Ha'apai, and Babao. So obviously we weren't too scared of interacting and engaging with Europeans, right? When they first
And I
came.
just want to clarify, when Masi is saying shipwreck, this is not from natural disasters.
Yes.
This is from Tongan disasters on the ships. The
Man-made.
Tongans,
This is man-made.
man-made
Yes.
natural disaster.
So yeah, so if you think about it, Cook was really lucky with the reputation Tonga had. But thank goodness they didn't have fast communication, because Cook wouldn't come by Tonga if that was the case. But no, just that evidence, the evidence of the Tuitonga Empire, of especially that group, going to the Americas, meeting certain different kind of people, going to Asia, meeting a different kind of people. So obviously, when they saw these Europeans, they're like, right? You're like saying, you're not we're not wild, but we're just saying what you're doing here. You have some cool technology, and you can use that to take over us. Maybe, like, this is the intellectual thinking, that they're the same level. This I'm trying to say that the level of thinking were in the same level. They were not thinking of, man, they have these weird looking boats. Oh man, their skin is different. Like, it's not a it wasn't that wasn't the talking point for the Tuitonga. The talking point was, hey, what are you doing here? Because I've been around a few places myself too. So that, and also you're adding by a lot of the havoc that the Tongans were conducting themselves when new European ships will come by. Man, it's in the hundreds of how many ships they've wrecked. So
Yeah.
to me, the Tongans were not too, and even I think Mariner even wrote when the Europeans were doing their entertainment, a lot of the Tongans were not impressed with their way of showing what the sailors were doing with their entertainment and stuff they were doing with the Tongans. They were not too impressed, but it just shows the level of thinking that the Tuitonga was at with Captain Cook, and that's what I was just trying to say. Compared to right the less access of certain groups of island of our Polynesian neighbors that weren't able or mingle or interact with people none of our Polynesian um, heritage to understand what the reason why they're not coming to really kind of make friends. They're there to look for opportunities and maybe take advantage if it presents itself, which many of the Polynesian islands kind of fell into. But that's just me, Tua. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to
Yes.
put in.
I mean, it very much aligned with what you're saying. When you build a ha'amonga, right? And a big
Mm,
reason for that ha'amonga is to tell you the seasons, when's the best time to travel, right?
mm,
You understand that traveling long distance, it's a high risk, right? And it takes a lot of resources to do that. I mean, what did I think it was Tuitonga Momo? He was the one who started to initiate in the Polynesian Empire to set up governors in faraway lands, in
mm,
remote locations where they didn't have to come to Tonga twice a
mm,
year for the Inasi and the Polo Polo. It's you when you're the one doing the traveling and the logistics and the planning to travel long distances, and they obviously knew these people were from long distances because, like you're saying, the Tuitonga and the Polynesians were moving all over Polynesia,
yeah,
right? And we don't always see these people, so obviously they're from
very, very far.
very, very far away.
Yeah.
So they're not here. And when you understand that, the amount of resources, the amount of risk that you're taking, and the
Mm,
amount of knowledge and the technology, naturally you're thinking these guys aren't here to go on vacation, right?
mm,
This is you have to ask those questions because you're trying to understand what is going on here.
correct.
You're the first wave, but
Mm,
you're not going to be the last wave. And what
mm,
are the intentions here? So for those who say, oh, that's like a stupid question, it's only a stupid question if you don't understand the reasoning behind the question,
mm,
right?
mm,
And I think it's a great indicator of what type of sophisticated political, economic, and
yeah.
religious understanding that Tuitonga had. This is kind of, I think this is important to recognize for this segment. Polynesian
Mm.
Princess, Tuloat Gautama, that was my video you just seen. I hope it is okay to continue using your content with either
Oh,
audios or visuals.
okay.
100%.
Oh, good
100%
Polynesian
Polly
Prince.
Prince. Malo.
Go
And
for
we not only 100%, we say thank you for considering the
Malo.
content to be worthy of such a thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's a couple questions I wanted to revisit because this is one that we get online all the time. Masi, can you read this one?
Ooh, yes. So this is from Renegade. He says, "Does the idea of Tonga being colonized by Christianity a fair statement? A lot of Hamos argue this, like Eli Eliot Sapolu. Tua, what you think?
Yes. Okay. Number one, if that's what you're going to call colonization, then everyone's been colonized, right? Because you're saying a colonization of ideas.
Yeah.
Ideas flow freely, right? So if you like this kind of rap rather than that type of reggae, oh, sorry, man, you're colonized.
Yeah.
There gotta be a little bit more rigid of a position, right? Rather than just saying, oh, because of Christianity. And I think we did a pretty good job because we walked through this Renegade, and we actually
Oh,
thought it
yeah.
might be
Did
a
a
good
live.
idea to
Mm,
bring that young lady that
Yes.
Is that Elliot Tapolu, that one guy that
Yes.
we watched his video
Yeah.
to bring the young lady he was kind of critiquing there, because that kind of thinking renegade is because they don't understand Tongan history,
Mm.
right? They don't understand how Christianity in many ways had a lot of parallels. And I want to make this distinction.
Mm.
There's the old religion that we could probably say that Tangaloa and Maui and the Taula brought, that was very different than the general practice of religion on in Tonga when Tupou the First was uniting Tonga under Christianity. And this is something that is a nuance that not a lot of people make this distinction. There was the government and the religion was disintegrating, right?
Mm.
And there were, just like the government, this is what is funny that I think is kind of interesting today. Religion and government are almost the same thing. They're interconnected. You can never fully separate. And we can have that conversation about the separation of church and state. That is, as I've gone through and looked, that's not a correct way to look at it. Religion and governance are very closely tied,
Yeah.
right? And when Tonga goes through its disintegration of the Tongan or Polynesian Empire, not only is the government disintegrated into factions, so is the religion. The religion breaks it into factions, and there was no longer a unified religion under the traditional taulas. Each chiefdom started having its own religion, and they actually started worshiping some of
Men
the
or
old
something.
chiefs. Yes, the ancestors, a great chief in their area became a god, and they'd pray to that. On all the record that I understand, Tupou the First, when he was going around demolishing the quote unquote old religion, it was that. Do you know where the old religion was headquartered? In Mu'a with the
Yeah.
Tu'itonga, because the Tu'itonga was a religious figure.
Mm.
He went and cleansed everywhere except for Mu'a, where the original and old religion was. So that's one thing. The second thing is Amber Alert.
Yep.
The second
Weather
thing is
alert.
weather alert.
Yep.
The second thing is this. There are many Christian missionaries who looked at ancient Tongan practices and knowledge and said, these people behave like ancient Israel. Some of the rituals, some of the knowledge of an afterlife, very similar to ancient Israel and the beliefs of ancient Israel. So my position is this: if you have to point to Christianity as being colonized, that is finding an excuse. That means you don't have a good position on attacking Tonga's ability to remain independent. So you have to use something that Tongans embraced freely. And I know he challenges that Tongans didn't choose it. We challenge that heavily. But second, the old religion, from our perspective, had a lot of parallels with Christianity. And that's why a lot of people in Polynesia embraced it. That's my response to that, Mr. Atearo.
Nice. No, Renegade. I would suggest for you to check out Maui Tekelangi. He's the one that we did the last live, I believe, Tua, with
Mm,
him. He's not on our video section, but if you go in the live, he's there. He goes through kind of filling the gaps of the ill-informed information that Sapolu kind of has when he talks about the Tongans not being freed, but he's not getting that information correctly because he's going off a, a narrative or record that was recorded by a Balangi gentleman that didn't understand the cultural and the historic context in the Tongan history of what Dubois the First was actually doing. Um, to that. So it wasn't he. That's a good understanding of that. And just regarding the Christianity, do it like what you said. It's an idea. So that how can Tonga be colonized through an idea? That means everyone who used paper money of how we exchange goods, we've all been
colonized.
colonized. Like you've been mentioning, because the idea of money exchange. Well, I don't know. Do you know Tua, who's the first country to do the paper money thing? So that
Mm-mm.
yeah. So I'm just trying to say like that. Everyone who takes and borrows an idea to create a civilization. It's not the definition of colonization of what other people suggesting. It's just kind of like somebody just trying to pick at Tonga because we are unique and different. But they need to understand, and we've touched on it, that we are part of the Polynesian nation, and to have the root of the Polynesian nation not contaminated and unbroken with our history, that we be able to kind of correct. And that's kind of why we've kind of set this platform for us to discuss and come from this angle, because not many of our Polynesian people can can explain the history, kind of what we're doing, because no one really talks about it. It's almost like a touchy subject a little bit to us. That's why many people don't talk about it, because maybe because they feel like they put down the Ha'amoa or the Tahiti or the Hawaii or the Maori because of what happened. But hey, colonization is the process of it was ugly, but at the same time we all need to be proud of us surviving, so that we can say not all of our Polynesian brothers and sisters were colonized, and we can give you a different lens of view of true Polynesian history, and we can collaborate, and everyone has their little bits here and there, and kind of give a better understanding than what we have now of what our Polynesian origins are like. So
Yeah.
that's just me.
No, and my last comment on this, another way to express the weakness of this idea, renegade, is if you believed in this idea, you're basically saying you're not able or willing to adapt and take a good idea and use it for your benefit. So if you really believe in this idea, well, that's exactly why you got colonized, because you weren't willing or able to take the good and apply it and use it to your benefit. This is the reason why Tonga survived colonization. We saw good in Christianity, we adopted it. We saw good in what a constitution could do, we adopted it. Our leaders saw the good that would come from freeing the people, we adopted it. We saw the good in keeping our government run in our own language, so we kept that. So we took the good from our history, our culture, our thousands of years of the civilization functioning. We held on to the necessary pieces, and then where there are other pieces in the new environment, we took that. That's why, to me, if we adopted this idea that Elliot Sapolu presents here, Tonga would not have survived.
Yeah.
Okay. And then to make it even worse, like Masi is saying, is so we're saying I can't accept any good idea because that means I've been colonized. I can't go get a master's. So Elliot Sapolu has been colonized because he became a lawyer, right? Who created common law? Who created that structure?
At the Palangi University.
At the Palangi University. So, I mean, this is what I'm saying. When you got to come up with these kinds of things, just say that you don't have a good argument against Tonga keeping its sovereignty. So that's
yeah.
I think we've beat that horse to death there. We take that as a very weak argument, renegade. To be honest. So interesting. Let's see.
Very interesting. Good engagement today, everyone.
Yes.
Maria.
I did see. Oh, welcome back, Matafa.
Hey,
welcome back. It's been a minute. I know our schedule's chaotic. I'm traveling a lot. I'm relocating, so it's great to see you. I think I can answer this one. Masi, I'll read it. It says, any chance of getting Dr. Kaili on the pod? He referenced your father's work in many interviews. Mataafa, we have reached out directly to Mr. Kaili. He's even made comments on some of our YouTube videos. We have invited him. So far, his last comment to us was, once he finishes viewing all of our videos, then he will join us. Well, I guess because we're always making new videos, he may never get there, but we do have an open invitation for him to join us. And we once again, if Professor Kairi is watching this, who did we reach out to, Masi, on your end? Professor
I've reached out to Okushi Tino Mahina. Yep, and had multiple conversations with him on the phone. I just got a text to give him a call back, and we're working on it. We're working on the background, everyone, just to get
Yes.
everyone from different views joining our platform and just have a real talanoa, not a talanoa that makes you, get people that people are not talking about important things of our origin. Just talanoa with not people being offended. Just let the talanoa happen in the
Happen.
flow. Yes.
No, 100%. And we're not necessarily, and we want, if any of these people that have different concepts or ideas from us,
Yeah.
we're not looking to have quote unquote a debate. We're looking to have a conversation.
Mm.
We know we're not foolish to think we're going to resolve every question and concern in the world on our show. But what we think would be more valuable, have those ideas presented, because we think people having
Yeah.
conversations, as
Yeah.
long as the ideas are given an opportunity to show their technique and their style, then every viewer and listener can decide whether one is guillotine is better than the other guy's
Mm.
triangle or knockout power or kick, and everyone can make their own conclusion of which idea seems to have the best chance of doing well. Oh yeah, wait. T's asked me this question. Tua, why did you get a new camera for your setup? Yeah, I see HD my tonight.
Oh.
Shit, yeah. Masi T's, I think it's from all the lights in Vegas. Mahalo ko rub off the lights from Vegas or Reno. I've been in Reno the whole week,
Eh,
right? I only spent a couple days in Vegas. Spent most of my time um in Reno. So maybe it's the Reno Air T's. I don't know.
Nevada Air. Eh? Ki makehe ang AI Nevada ki
Yo.
just eh?
Yahweh. Let's see here. Any closing thoughts, Masi? I think
That's
we
it.
have enough to cover our show. We caught up on the questions. I think we're good. Any closing thoughts, Mr. Atearoa?
No, just letting everyone know that I'm grateful for your engagements, all the viewers. Just grateful for you guys tuning in, enjoying the content. Tu and I just love doing this. We don't, not doing anything for anything else. It's just we love talking about Polynesian history, current affairs, and kind of all kind of history. We love talking about it because these are the kind of conversations we have on a normal basis, just within our family. So I'm just grateful for you, Dua, for starting this platform, and then we're just sharing it with the world. So Ofatu to everybody, and I'll probably be traveling this week, so I don't know when will be another live. So it'll maybe take a little while, but I appreciate your guys following. That's it. Thank you.
Malo, Mr. Atero. I want to reiterate that. Like to thank all the viewers, all the listeners on the audio podcast platforms, and really, really appreciate people sharing the content. It goes a long ways. Like Masi said, we just want to invite more people to talk about this.
Mm.
We notice that certain ideas that are bad, they survive because we don't talk about it enough. And if the bad ideas are given full control, then it impacts us. It'll impact generations from us. And really grateful for Mr. Atearoa's time. It's a labor of love and it takes time and energy. So appreciate his time. And to close, as we always say, guys, stay curious, be bold, and don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. Until next time, peace.
Take care, everyone.
Malo.